Namaste and greetings. I, Reet Lath, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today marks the fourth day of Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, an online national winter school program, a 2-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship. This program is organized by IMPRI, Gender Impact Studies Center, and would be chaired by Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, visiting Distinguished Professor, IMPRI. This program has an excellent panel of experts who will be sharing their expertise for the duration of this program. We are honored to have a distinguished panel of experts joining us for day 4, which includes Dr. Simi Mehta ji, CEO and Editorial Director, IMPRI, New Delhi, and Dr. Purnima Chauhan ji, IAS retired, former Secretary, Government of Himachal Pradesh and Director, Himachal Pradesh Institute of Public Administration, visiting Senior Fellow, IMPRI. The panel of convener comprises of Dr. Arjun Kumar ji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, Professor Gumadi Sridevi ji, and Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam ji. Proceeding further, I welcome all the participants to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for being interested and putting your time, energy, and efforts into fostering the development of young women leaders in public policy while helping us to bring together the practitioners and participants through this course for impactful policy research and action. Before we start today's session, I would like to remind the housekeeping announcements once again. Please join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise and refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Now, without any further ado, let's start our program. I'm delighted to call upon Professor Vibhuti Patel ji to deliver the opening chair remarks. We welcome you, ma'am. Ma'am, you're on mute.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you're muted again.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So thank you, Reet, for these introductory remarks. And now we welcome all the participants for this fourth day of online National Winter School program and welcome Dr. Purnima Chauhan. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Arjun Kumar, Dr. Simi Mehta, Dr. Shalu Nigam, Dr. Reet Lath for putting this course together. And now brief summary of what all transpired. On day 1, we had a very mind-blowing lecture which provided the overview of women's status and struggles during last 75 years, and so many important questions regarding the legal reforms, about the grassroots movements, about backlash for women's rights, and need for the solidarity that was emphasized by Dr. Ms. Amarjit Kaur. In the day 2, where I provided a post-independence scenario in terms of economic, social, political aspects of women's challenges and various perspectives, right from the critique of trickle-down theory to Weed, Bad, Agad, and the recent new challenges and the new issues which the women's movement has taken up, and the latest news of Nari Shakti Adhiniyam legislation 33%, which ensures a 33% reservation for women in the parliament, were deliberated upon. Ms. Urvashi Prasad was the second person who spoke on Niti Aayog, and she shared her personal experiences of being a young woman and how both in the NGO sector and now in Niti Aayog, and how young women are becoming catalysts for change and in this new era of the public policy. And day 3, we had a very important global understanding of Roxana Marinescu's speech, where she talked about 4 waves of women's movement and feminist movement, where she talked about the quest for equality in first phase, in the second wave, which also saw women's rights within the matrix of gender binary. In the third way was more inclusive because it accepted intersectional perspective of caste, class, race, religion, gender, ethnicity, and geographical location. And currently, the fourth wave feminism, which is informed by information technology revolution, that is online activism, has become a marked feature of the second decade of the 21st century. And also the intersectionality of age, disability, race, they have become far more pronounced. And the new leadership from this groups which are facing intersectional marginality have emerged. And she also gave us the account of Women's March in Washington, D.C., some important movements against gender-based violence in Latin America. And also she talked about the chicklet, the pop culture, and also Alice Walker's work, and how womanist trend by the Afro-American women have also expanded our understanding of feminism, and decolonial feminism also she talked about. And then we had a discussion, very, very lively. All 3 days were marked by extremely lively discussion and serious questioning and sharing by the participants. Now, today on the fourth day, now we are going to have equally important, I have heard Dr. Purnima Chauhan earlier also, and she is a administrator with a extremely gender responsive way of intervention. So they are going to benefit a lot. Over to IMPRI team.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we will delve into a discussion on creative projects and essay presentation led by the IMPRI team. I would like to invite Vishali ji, Priyanka ji, and Vidita ji for the same.
A very good afternoon to everyone. As part of the fellowship, we have provided you with a guideline document over the email. And in that, we have provided you details of the creative project that will be required to be undertaken by our fellows. I will be dwelling into it a little bit so that everyone is apprised of what is required in the creative project. The fellows are expected to undertake a creative project during the course. The project has to be submitted to IMPRI in 2 forms. One as a presentation during the course, which will be held on March 2nd and 8th, 2024. And fellows will be expected to present their creative project in either forms of visual, oral, or narrative mediums. That is upon the fellows what method suits them the best in which they want to deliver the creative project. Also, these may include, but are not limited to, songs, performance poetry, paintings, photo essays, and short films. Also, when you're going to present, please ensure that the time limit for the same will be 3 to 4 minutes in a PPT form consisting of 4 to 5 slides or a maximum 3 to 4 minutes, as I've mentioned before. Further on suggestions from the experts, the fellows can convert their presentation topic in a research article for the anthology publication as an opportunity to become an individual chapter contributing author in a special edition of IMPRI books, YWLPPF, an anthology of essays on young women leaders in public policy. The program offers participants the unique opportunity to delve into diverse topics. The deadline for the submission of chapter is March 10, 2024. Also, participants can choose topics from a varied area of international, national, local human rights laws and policies. We have provided you a list of thematic areas where they can delve into in the guideline document itself. Further, there is a deadline for the abstract submission. We have invited all participants to kind of submit an abstract outlining their chosen research topic related to human rights. The abstract should include your idea for the chapter and in which form you choose to present it. Whether you're planning to write a slogan, create a short film, or express your research in a unique way, we encourage you to share your innovative ideas with us. And the limit and the length of the abstract submission is 250 to 300 words, which includes a 100 to 150 words brief note about your chosen mode of expression for the presentation, which will be a photo essay, performance poetry, slogan, film, etc. Along with the abstract, kindly share your background and interest in short bio note of 75 to 100 words. Also, the submission deadline for the same is 1st Feb 2024. And you're supposed to submit the abstract at the email address provided below, which is learningatimpri@gmail.com. Right below that, you'll see that the research essay timeline has been mentioned, which please adhere to the timelines as well. And if anybody requires a extension of the deadline, please write to us at learningatimpri@gmail.com. Also, the guideline document gives you further details about the research essay guidelines, what all is required with respect to the style guide, spelling, abbreviations, whatever is required with respect to writing it. Also references, how we use, what kind of like the way you're supposed to write your references. We have provided you the references style as well in the guideline document itself, which is the style guidelines, which will provide you a very in-depth understanding when you're going to write on it. Rest, if anybody has any doubts, they can, or any queries, they can write to us. And thank you.
Thank you so much. The floor is now open for questions from the audience. If you have any doubts you would like to ask right now, you can type in the Q&A box or unmute.
I think there was a question I just saw, which said that can they work in collaboration with other fellows while doing these projects?
Vibhuti ma'am, would you like to deliberate on this? Because they might need to have a similarity in the topic as well.
Yeah, if they have a meeting, because that is called group work, which is very important. And they can also, if they are writing research paper, they can have a larger sample size, because, or plus you can have a multi-centric. If the participants are in 2 or 3 different cities and the same topic is being, and same questionnaire is administered, it becomes a multi-centric research. If they are coming up with a poster also, I think it would be, they can contribute in terms of, they can have a group discussions and also discuss the imagery and slogan and content and whatever this thing. So even it can be a group presentation in terms of a poster or a research paper. Yeah. If they are coming up with a skit or a play, then also it will be useful for them. Because generally, like what they do is a play reading. Because online, yeah, even if they want to enact it, it is possible. But otherwise, if they want to discuss a skit or a 10 minutes or 5 minutes of a play, then also they can do it in a group. Yeah, group presentation is fine.
Thank you, ma'am. Seeing that we have no more questions right now, we'll be moving on. It is my honor and privilege to invite Ms. Simi Mehta ji to impart her expertise on the intricate process of research article writing from idea to publication.
Thank you, Reet. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all having a productive learning time in the Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship. Thank you to the chair of the session, Professor Vibhuti Patel, for outlining the or summarizing what happened in the last few days. And it really provides a good segue into what the young women leaders out here may intend to present, since the creative project guidelines have also been given. So I'll just begin. I'll be sharing with you some of the insights on research article writing from idea to publication, especially with relation to the social sciences. So writing a research article from conceptualization to publication, it involves several key stages, and I'll provide you with a step-by-step guideline to help you navigate through the process. Next slide. So the first step is to identify a research idea. And every article begins with a curiosity on a topic of interest and utilize your expertise to present to the world your perspectives. So the first step is to start by identifying a topic of interest within your field of study. And make an abstract which contains a brief background of description, and it involves problem statement and the major research questions that your article aims to seek answers of. And usually reputed journals, they ask for 200 to 300 words abstract with a few keywords, 4 to 5 keywords. So in the same abstract, that idea, you should be having a brief idea about the existing literature that would help you identify gaps and some controversies if there are any, and any other areas that need further exploration, which you think that you might be able to present. And then you'll have to formulate a few research questions or hypotheses that you have to validate or invalidate, and that would help you address the gaps in the knowledge. So the next step, after a short brief abstract, you'll have to think about the literature review. And literature review, we'll be talking more about it throughout my presentation here as well. That will help you to gain a better understanding. So the literature review would be, you'll have to conduct this comprehensive literature review to understand the existing research and the theories that are related to your topic. And if you do your literature review very comprehensively and thoroughly and meticulously, you will be able to even get ideas on the research questions that you may not have thought about through the existing literature. So it will help you identify the relevant methodologies as well as the theoretical frameworks and also findings from the previous studies. And maybe those previous studies, it may help you to identify what you perhaps want to present in your article. And these literatures that you would present, you will have to critically analyze and synthesize them so as to put them in the context of your research. And what normally, ideally, convenient way to present the literature review is to arrange the literature thematically under various subsections. So in this way, if you arrange them in such thematic, under such thematic areas, you will have all the relevant arguments on one theme of your chosen topic under one section. And so this will help you differentiate or segregate between various arguments as well. And always remember to make in-text citations followed by the full reference at the end of the bibliography section, which is in the references part. We'll talk about the literature review further as we go around the presentation. So next slide. After we have done a brief literature review, for the initial ideas exploration, we'll move on to what kind of research design do we want. So you'll have to have research objectives and the aims based on the identified gaps. And based on what kind of research you are intending to perform, you have to select the appropriate research methods. For example, if yours is is a study which is based on archival research, then you have to present an archival study as a research methodology. Or if it has to be experimental, or if it has to be observational or qualitative or quantitative, or it may have a mixed of all the approaches, or even action-based research. And then based on the research methods that you have identified and you have concretized upon, then it will help you to develop a clear-cut research design, including what are the sampling techniques, what are the data collection methods, and various kinds of research analysis and procedures that you would want to proceed with. Then we'll have to perform data collection and analysis based on the methods that you have employed previously, and all the data that you have secured or generated, including data also includes the archival resources. So you'll have to collate all the data and employ rigorous data analysis methods which will be relevant to your research design. And then based on the results, you have to interpret the results in relation to your research questions or hypothesis, which will help you answer the research questions and also validate or invalidate your hypothesis. Next slide. Yeah, so now we come to the main part, which is writing of the manuscript. So typically you need to follow the structure which is typically required by your target journal, which includes various subsections, and we'll talk about it shortly, which includes introduction, methodology, results, discussion, conclusion, etc. And so this structure has to be followed. And so write a clear and concise introduction that outlines the background, objectives, and significance of the study. Describe the methodology in detail, including the participant selection, data collection, analysis, and procedures. And present the results objectively using the tables, figures, and statistics wherever these are necessary. Discuss the implications of your findings and their contributions to the existing literature. And conclude the summary by summarizing the key findings, limitations, and future research directions. There may be research gaps even at the end of your study. However, it may help other prospective researchers on your topic to study those areas as well. So next slide. Now we'll delve into what are the contents of a standard report of a well-conducted research. First would be the title page. And this will also help you perhaps for writing your article or your research output even for this fellowship as well. So first would be the title page. Include the title of your report, your name, date, institution or organization which you're affiliated with, and also consider adding your institution's logo or graphic related to your research with their due permission from them. And one thing that has to be noted is wherever you are utilizing ideas from anywhere, that has to be properly cited. Second would be the table of contents. Provide a clear and comprehensive table of contents with the page numbers for easy navigation. Then would be the list of abbreviations used, and a list of tables and figures if you have used them or if you have put them in the manuscript. So those have to be also listed along with the page numbers. Then comes the executive summary. So normally people tend to read the introduction part more. They are more engaged in reading the executive summary. So summarize the major objectives, methods, findings, and recommendations of your research in a concise and quite engaging manner. And major highlights and key takeaways must be included in the executive summary. Next would be the introduction. Like after the executive summary, we actually begin with the main research article, which would have the introduction. So provide an overview of the research problem, its significance, and the research questions that you aim to address. Clearly state the objectives of your study and explain the relevance of your social science research in the context of your work. Now coming again to literature review, since this is most important part, so that's why it's back and forth. So conduct a thorough review of literature and theories relevant to your research topic. And literature review, when you conduct extensive literature review, it will help you also get ideas from those who have already conducted the study, and also help you with further references and further bibliographical sources, which you may also research upon and give you more ideas and better arguments that you can present in your literature review. So again, you should ideally arrange the literature according to the various themes. And you may also, if that is possible, you may critically evaluate the previous studies and especially identify the gaps that you feel are there, and or their weaknesses, and how your study is going to address those gaps. And yes, in the end, when you write your references, it may also follow the footnote style or the endnote style, but that has to be taken care in cognizance with your target journal, whatever is there, whatever are their editorial guidelines. So that has to be followed quite strictly. Next slide. Methodology. You'll have to describe your research design. Next part would be in the methodology, your research design, including the approach, as we discussed, quantitative, qualitative, mixed, etc., and data collection methods and sampling strategies. But when you are doing this, you have to justify your choices and explain how they are aligning with your research project, and detail any ethical considerations and measures that are taken to ensure the participant confidentiality and informed consent. So this is very important, and especially the journals in the Western countries, they ask for such a confidentiality report before any publication actually happens. So that has to be taken care of. And in the results, you have to present your findings very clearly and objectively. You may use tables, charts, and graphs wherever appropriate to enhance the understanding of the reader. You can provide detailed analysis of the data, linking it back to your research objectives and how you have attained them. You need to highlight any patterns or trends or significant relationships that have been discovered through your research. Then after presenting the results in an objective form, you need to engage in a discussion, which will be quite theoretical. And you have to interpret and analyze the results in the context of the existing theories and literature. You need to discuss the implications of your findings and their significance to the wider social science research. You need to address any limitations, as I mentioned before, that such and such these were the limitations of your study, and maybe further research, future research may be undertaken on those areas as well. And finally, we'll have to have a concluding part, a conclusion, where you'll have to summarize the key findings, implications, and contributions of your research on the wider social sciences, and restate the research objectives and how they have been achieved. If it is because it is a public policy course, so you may, if you undertake any public policy research, please try and include as many policy recommendations as possible, of course restricted to your field of study, that will help other practitioners and policymakers and other researchers to take note of, and also maybe for their future planning and action. Next is the references. While these come at the end, but these are very important. You need to follow a consistent and recognized citation style based on the journal's requirement. For all the sources that you have studied, you have cited in your report, or whatever has been asked by your institution. And these have to be alphabetized by the author's last names. You can also include appendices, any additional materials that are relevant to your research, for example, questionnaires, for example, any other data which may help in cross-checking or verifying your data analysis, etc. You can also include interview transcripts, photographs from primary field study, etc. So next slide. Now that you have written your first draft of your manuscript, the real work begins. Next slide, please. Yeah, so editing and revising. You have to review your manuscript for clarity, coherence, and accuracy. While we tend to lose our patience by now, but this is very important, reviewing, continuous review. And you may also send your manuscript to colleagues who can keep your manuscript confidential, because this is targeted towards publication in a journal. So get reviews from mentors, colleagues, supervisors to improve the quality of your writing, and also they can also give you some good feedback on what may be missing, so that your journal, your article is actually accepted by the journal. Then you submit and it goes for peer review. You identify the target journals that align with the scope and audience of your research. Prepare a cover letter. They generally ask all these things in your in the editorial guidelines also. And submit your manuscript, either it is through online various online process, or you may simply have to email them. And then your manuscript will undergo peer review. Sometimes it is blind, double-blind peer review. And during this time, experts in the field will evaluate the quality and originality and significance of the research. And after a few days, perhaps, you may hear from the reviewers, you may hear from the journal editorial team with the reviewers' comments, and then you may have to revise your manuscript accordingly. And then finally, after you have incorporated all the reviews, comments, etc., then if your article is accepted, then upon acceptance, you'll have to work with the journal's editorial team to address any remaining formatting or proofreading, etc. And once finalized, your article will be published in the journal and made available in the wider community of readers. So throughout the process, it is important to adhere to the ethical guidelines, such as proper citation practices, ensuring participant confidentiality, obtaining necessary approvals for researchers that involve human or animal subjects, and additionally staying organized and maintaining a clear communication with the collaborators and journal editors can help you with a smoother publication journey. So next slide. So some additional tips that will help you navigate through the process smoothly. While this may be very overwhelming, but if you follow these step-by-step guidelines, it will be quite smooth and quite helpful. So in the executive summary, please try and stay away from jargons and technical terms. Use a very clear and concise writing style to as much as possible. Proofread your report thoroughly for grammar, spelling, punctuation errors, etc. So clear-cut, simple writing would be sufficient. You don't need to have a flowery language expertise, etc. But if you have them, so you may utilize them to the best of your abilities. Most important is ensure that the literature that has been used is cited, and the report and the article is completely plagiarism-free. Plagiarism-free means you have to make appropriate citations, and you may use different available plagiarism checking tools for the purpose. For example, Turnitin, and there are others also available. So make sure that you restrict your plagiarism to like 8% or 10% at the max, but all the researches that you have borrowed, your even arguments that you have borrowed have proper citations, full citations, and wherever necessary, you need to provide the hyperlinks in the references. And please pay attention to all formatting, ensuring consistent headings, font styles, as has been asked by the editorial team of the target journal, and the margins throughout the document. So it is important because the editorial team will have to spend lesser time doing all these, and it helps build a better rapport with the journal's editorial team. You can also include relevant visuals, charts, graphs, images to enhance that understanding of your findings, and makes it better for the reader. And you may seek feedback from colleagues or mentors to ensure that the highest editorial standards are met. So this is a general guideline as a starting point, and you may have to tailor it to fit the specific requirements and guidelines provided by your institution, provided by your target journal. And I think it will help you smoothen through the process. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your valuable time with us. Your expertise has provided us with the invaluable insights and practical guidance that will definitely aid us in our own research endeavors. Thank you so much, ma'am. The floor is now open for questions from the audience. You can raise your hands or type in the Q&A box.
I can see there's a question on confusion in the title page. Title page, as in on the top, on the first page, there has to be your topic of what your presentation is. For example, somebody's topic is related to election, panchayati raj and women, so that can be a topic. And then the institution's logo, and then your name submitted to wherever you're submitting. So that is the topic page. So first page, normally if your research article is going for blind peer review, then that first page is completely different, because they'll remove your name or your institution, and they'll only send for peer review the major manuscript, so that people cannot identify who is the author, to have an unbiased and fair review. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Ravideep ji, if you have a question, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think I just answered her question.
Oh, okay. Then Deepika ji, you can go ahead with yours.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Ma'am, as I sended that I choose that topic, Panchayati Raj and women and election. But my concern is the city I was live in, Noida. यहाँ पे elections नहीं होते हैं. यहाँ पे just assembly election and parliamentary election was happened. तो I was thought कि जैसे पंचायत राज में है कि एक पॉपुलेशन के बाद आपको इलेक्शन कंडक्ट कराने ही कराने हैं पंचायती राज के, तो मैं उसमें रिसर्च करने का सोच रही थी एंड आई वाज कंफ्यूज कि स्टार्ट कहाँ से करूँ, because my entire education was in a Hindi medium and totally come into English medium. It's little bit difficult for me writing up whole articles, and for me Hindi is very easy language. When it comes to English and writing down everything is little bit difficult.
हिंदी में भी लिख सकते हैं ना सबमिशंस. इससे पहले भी एक कोर्स में जमीला जी ने अपना सबमिशन हिंदी में दिया था. सो हिंदी में
मैम मैं चूज तो इंग्लिश ही करूंगी.
अच्छा.
पर थोड़ी सी मुझे रिसर्च करने में इश्यूज हो रही है कि मैं स्टार्ट कहाँ से करूँ रिसर्च करना.
स्टार्ट टू रिव्यू ऑफ लिटरेचर, जैसे सिमी जी ने बताया ना, जब आप रिव्यू ऑफ लिटरेचर करोगे और ये विषय पे तो बहुत ही सैकड़ों डॉक्यूमेंट्स, आर्टिकल्स, पोजीशन पेपर्स आपको मिल जाएंगे, मैनिफेस्टोज, वोटर एजुकेशन प्रोग्राम, पूछते ही इतना मटेरियल है. आप जैसे पढ़ना चालू करोगे आपको रिव्यू ऑफ लिटरेचर तो मिल ही जाएगा. उसके बाद यू हैव टू आइडेंटिफाई वेदर यू वांट टू फोकस ऑन वोटर्स परसेप्शन. उसमें भी कौन से एज ग्रुप यंग लेने हैं आपको, 18 to 25 के एज ग्रुप के वोटर्स क्या सोचते हैं, किस वोट होना चाहिए, उस पर करना चाहते हैं, या बहनों के विमेन एज अ वोटर्स करना चाहते हैं, या तो इफ देयर आर कैंडिडेट्स इन योर रीजन, इन योर एरिया, वो कैंडिडेट्स को जो कॉर्पोरेटर हो, काउंसिलर हो, उनका आप करना चाहते हैं, या तो मीडिया रिपोर्टिंग ऑन पंचायती राज इंस्टीट्यूशन, तो न्यूज़पेपर्स जितने भी है वो सभी इसका एनालिसिस करना चाहते हैं. वंस यू डू रिव्यू ऑफ लिटरेचर, नो, यू विल बी एबल टू आइडेंटिफाई व्हाट मेक्स यू मोर कमिटेड. कौन से विषय पे आपको ज्यादा कमिटमेंट है, क्योंकि आपके पास 2 महीने हैं. सिमी जी आप कहना चाहिए.
जी, मैं सहमत हूँ मैम आपसे. यही है कि एक बार आप पढ़ना स्टार्ट करेंगे इस टॉपिक पे, आपका आइडियाज बहुत अच्छा है, बट उसी पे अगर आप फोकस करें, आप पढ़ना जैसे स्टार्ट करें, लैंग्वेज इज नॉट अ बैरियर. आप उसी भाषा में पढ़ें जिसमें भी आप कंफर्टेबल हो, और उसी में आप फर्दर एंगेज करें. जितना भी आप पढ़ेंगे उससे आपकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग और मैच्योर होती जाएगी, और उसमें जो आपको लगेगा कि हाँ यहाँ पे इस एरिया पे फोकस करना है, जैसे मैम ने विमेन वोटर्स पे बोला, या फिर मीडिया रिपोर्टिंग पे बोला, या कुछ एज ग्रुप का बोला, अर्ली न्यू अभी तो चल रहा है, गवर्नमेंट का कुछ स्कीम चल रहा है, न्यू वोटर्स को एंगेज करना, उनको एनलिस्ट करना, उसके बारे में भी आप लिख सकते हैं. ये न्यू एरिया होगा, ज्यादा उस पर काम नहीं है. तो उसके ऊपर आप फोकस करके आप अपने आइडियाज को भी आप उसमें इनकॉर्पोरेट कर सकती हैं। और वैसे जनरली मीडिया रिपोर्टिंग और उसमें कुछ भाषा जनरली सरल होता है, तो यू डोंट हैव टू वरी मच अबाउट इट।
Yes.
तो एक बार आप उस पे
हर एक पार्टी की अपनी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी की अपनी वेबसाइट होती है, उसके मैनिफेस्टो का एनालिसिस करना, व्हाट आर दे प्रॉमिसिंग अलग
Yeah,
अलग
yes, ma'am.
पार्टी
Yeah, वो तो
analysis-
already I am doing.
वही, हाँ, तो वो भी एक अच्छा टॉपिक है वही।
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
थैंक यू।
Thank you, ma'am. Now I would like to invite Vishali ji to talk about post-submission guidelines for clarity of output.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. So, as I had mentioned earlier, that there'll be fellows can present a research essay as well, and there is another thing that comes across as an output will be the post submission guidelines, which will, once you have written a research essay, in order to have the maximum impact of your writing, we have outlined further further publication examples as well, such as journals, magazines, and various other platforms where you can get your research essays published. Because once you submit the research essay to us, we ensure that it is reviewed by our chair. Vibhuti ma'am is there. She always gives her input and insights to enhance your research essays, right? So it reaches to a very good publication criteria. So you have there are three platforms like submission and publication at IMPRI. Then there's publication outside of IMPRI, and there are creatives for social media as well. So first is the submission and publication at IMPRI, which is a research essay PDF as per the standard template for professional record and use. This will be within IMPRI platforms. And we have also provided a layout of research essay. Then we have the Priyanka a little bit, yes. Then we have the create professional research profiles at ResearchGate and Academia profile and upload report PDF. So this is outside of like you can always have your make your account at ResearchGate and Academia profiles, and then obviously you can upload your report which you have submitted with us at IMPRI as well over there for wider reach, and for you'll get an online link as well for your upload that you can share it further with people. And then we have a write a blog article for IMPRI Insights, which will be 800 to 1000 words, which can include key findings, story, experience of your research, or if any of the groundwork that you have done, you can obviously get in your observations also included in that. Moving on, next, in this we have, you can contribute a chapter, as I had mentioned earlier as well, to the edited book volume in 3000 to 4000 words. And it will be titled, and it will have an ISBN number as well. Next will be the publication outside IMPRI, which will be inclusive of journals such as Economic and Political Weekly, Sage Journals, Impact and Policy Research Review. Next, moving on to this, then we'll have publications as magazine articles as well. You can also have op-ed and commentary articles in print and electronic media through newspapers and electronic forms. We have mentioned the various platforms where you can submit those research articles or research paper that you have made into it. Then we have submitting abstract for paper presentations. Fellows can apply for various conferences, seminars, call for papers, and other research related and networking opportunities in future with the outcome of their research. Obviously, you can bring in a new perspective or a new gap area that you have found in this, and you can obviously present it in the conferences that or seminars or call for papers that you come across anywhere at any platforms. We have Loctopus, for example, one of the platforms where such kind of notifications keep on coming. So we have actually done something similar for our previous fellowship program also, which was Law and Public Policy Action Research. And currently, we are practicing the same for our Public Policy Action Research Fellowship as well. And so we encourage you to also, work on your creative project and make it as a research article and essay for further publication, because we have a chair, their insights will actually help enrich your articles. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vishali ji. I would also like to thank Dr. Simi Mehta ji, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, and Vishali Singh ji for answering all the questions with so much clarity and patience. Now, I'm delighted to call upon Dr. Purnima Chauhan ji, who will enlighten us on the crucial topic of empowering young women leaders in local governance. We welcome you, ma'am. If you could please take it from here, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reet. I will be sharing my screen, and let me just get the presentation. You can see it. Is the presentation visible?
Not yet,
Oh,
ma'am.
not yet.
Loading now.
Just a minute. It should be actually. It's loading at the moment.
It has started screen sharing. It's written. Yeah, now it's started.
It's visible?
No.
Not yet. Why is it not visible?
Ma'am, kindly stop and try sharing again.
All right. Just a minute. Why am I not able to expand the screen over here?
Oh.
Ma'am, you can stop the share once.
Just
Stop share.
I'm trying to expand the screen that we have with us.
Ma'am, you can double or triple click.
Yeah, I'm double clicking on this and trying to expand this. Your screen sharing is paused, it is saying. Shall I stop share and then again do it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, now. So I click on the share screen, the green one, and then select the PPT. Is it?
Yes, now it is.
It's okay now?
Now
Yeah.
it's, ma'am, you can go full screen.
Yeah. I am going full screen and okay. So thank you very much. I think this is a great opportunity, and especially thanks to IMPRI for having brought in Dr. Patel, Professor Roxanne, Urvashi Prasad, and of course, Comrade Amarjeet with her fiery start to this entire program. And I'm singularly privileged to have been invited for this. And this is what, in fact, I consider this a huge opportunity for myself to be able to not just speak about what are the challenges as a policymaker, which one has seen, but how I have been a convert to gender issues. One was not born into it because in the gamut of 36 years in the civil services, one has handled 25 departments. But gender came upon me like, I would say, enlightenment. And ever since the last 25 years, I can say it has been an abiding passion. And there are many reasons for that. And perhaps one of the proudest moments was that today is 27th of January, and yesterday when we were having our 75th Republic Day, it was such a matter of pride to be able to see so many women actually breaking not just glass ceilings, glass lifts, and glass floors, but the bastion, the male bastion, which was considered a preserve and a privilege. And they were showing they are no less than anybody. And honestly, I got the feeling, ye dil mange more. So having said that, when we say that men are from Mars and women are from Venus, I think now John Gray will have to rewrite his book where he brings both on Mother Earth and how to make Mother Earth a better place. whatever Dr. Simi Mehta has just said gives me a lot of hope that if at all, through our efforts, we can bring in some areas of research and they can capture the minds of these bright people on the screen, on the fellowship program, it will be a delight for me, honestly, because it is not just change. It is repetitive change. It is actually the cross intersectionalities of change in this particular sector, which are a challenge, a huge challenge. I consider, after having done whatever little one could on gender, having heard people in the last 2 weeks, and very erudite people, I must say, and who have done so much of research, honestly, we have just touched the iceberg of the gender issue. So what lies beneath? We scratch the surface and we try to examine, and I will try and examine this and share some experiences which have happened, which have led me to believe that this is an issue which is a game changer for the entire globe. But it is not just me, not just a few practitioners who have to believe that. There are reasons to believe that, and I will try and share some of the reasons which over a period of time have come to my mind. And I will be very glad to answer any questions regarding this. So first, I think I'll just go to this is not the structure of the PPT. It is a gender policy kaleidoscope. Is it visible?
It is in working mode. If you can make it in a full screen slideshow mode.
It is actually in a slideshow mode.
But
Oh,
here
it's
So I wanted to actually see myself as well as others. So should I do the escape just now and it'll come to a smaller mode then?
yes, ma'am. That can help.
But I still don't see anybody else. Let me just,
On the right hand side, can you see on the top?
yeah,
gallery.
I cannot, no, in fact, the whole screen, I can only see my slide.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That happens in share screen mode. But ma'am, if you can share us the slides, we can share it. Then you can easily speak. Would
But
that
then
be?
I'll have to go back and forth. That is the reason.
Oh,
So
then
not an issue. I'll
you can,
continue.
yeah, continue
I
and
don't
work.
have the benefit of seeing everybody, which would have been actually lovely. But yeah, irrespective, but I can't even see the questions then.
Ma'am will read it out.
So shall I just try this Zoom? I mean, the icon of Zoom, shall I click on that and then see how it works?
No, ma'am, that
No.
won't.
Okay, so let's not interrupt it then.
Yes.
So I'll
But
go
ma'am,
full screen.
don't go full screen because it's not visible to us. Ma'am, you can continue this working.
Now, this is
mode.
okay, this one?
Yeah, this one is
working mode. Yeah.
This is working mode, right? Okay. So I think what has been mapped by Professor Vibhuti and in her very striking presentation is actually the journey that gender has done from WID, WAD, GAD. And this particular journey is the one which this Pandora's box that we are going to open up, that how as a policy practitioner and trying to frame policy for gender, I was confronted gradually by these because I'm not a researcher. And that is why when this came to me, it strengthened my conviction and belief that something has to be done. So today, when we go from WID, WAD, and GAD to SDG 5, so we have traversed the journey from welfare to formal to protectionist and to substantive approaches to center staging gender. So the question is that why to engender? And then how to engender? If one is convinced of why we should engender, how to engender and where should we start? The where question is very important because as the intersectionalities will show, that irrespective of the hurdles that are there, the patriarchy, the misogyny, the fact remains that gender is sector neutral. It is everywhere. The only thing is that the belief has to be sustained. And I will share some examples of how this particular belief is what is resisted the most. And as a policymaker, I had to find a solution that when an opportunity arose, how should one do carpet bombing to instill gender into the governance framework? And that was a tough thing because carving out a brave new world doesn't just happen automatically. There have to be steps. Initially, perhaps what we have started calling disruptive reforms. This was perhaps one of those because everything seemed so hunky-dory, so normal. It almost tantamounted to being a bull in a china shop and creating that disruption which will upset many apple carts. because things seem so normal on the surface. And that is why this is the iceberg. And this is what I encountered when I actually launched the gender responsive budgeting policy in Himachal Pradesh. But let me share what went before that. When I joined the service, that was so many years ago now, almost 40 years ago. After a few years, I think 1 or 2 years, an interviewer came to me and asked me that this was just before the 8th of March, that do you think that all is well, that, you know, there is no gender bias? Among other questions that she asked me about the service. So I said, of course, there is no gender bias. And after 3 or 4 questions, this lady went and I stopped her. I said, I want to change the answer to my initial question. There is definitely a gender bias in the service. It is only a part of me which doesn't want to believe, which is in denial, which is saying that it is not there. And then as she asked me further questions related to that, I realized that my encounters with gender were not of today. They were earlier. And who was gender blind? I was the one who was gender blind because I had not realized that how gender was impacting me, despite the fact that having been very fortunate to be born in a family where women were given more importance perhaps than men. I never thought that there were any differences, but I was soon pulled out of my ivory tower. And then I remembered that in college, when I was actually compelled into debating on an issue, frailty, thy name is woman, the famous quotation by Shakespeare. And it was absolutely appalling that I'll have to speak for the motion that frailty, thy name is woman. Much as I tried to avoid it, but I actually had to speak ultimately. And I think to my advantage, it went off well. But the point that remained was it opened my eyes. So I call that the opening of my eyes chapter in my gender journey. Because the moment I went through myths, legends, and other things to be able to find arguments to support my debate, I realized that there were things that we just took for granted because it had the stamp of antiquity on it. We just took for granted. For instance, I revisited the question of Satyavan and Savitri. I don't know how many of you know about this story where, you know, the Yama, he comes and he wants to take Satyavan who has died, and Savitri, they have seen so many adversities. Her father-in-law, who was a king, he had lost his kingdom, and they had become very poor. And now her husband dies. And when Yama comes to take the body, she resists. And she asks for 3 boons. He grants her 3 boons. So among restoration of her father-in-law's kingdom and other things, she asked that, give me 100 sons. And it was very obvious that she can't have those 100 sons if her husband is not alive. But it was not the number of sons. The question of having 100 sons actually led me to believe that nobody ever revisited that particular story to say that did she ask for 100 children? Why only sons? She didn't ask for 100 daughters. She didn't ask for, she could have been very gender equal if she had asked for 50 sons and 50 daughters, but we are not expecting that. But this is just one small example to say that how gendered are our beliefs, myths, stories, and biases, and how this becomes a part of the narrative. We don't even sit and re-examine, we don't research, and we don't even examine what is the genesis of these, which become our mind space, which become like stories which are repeated, and because of repetition, they become truths. Then there was this other course subsequently when I went. In fact, when I opted for the civil services, state services. And at that point of time, the gentleman who was taking our applications, there was nothing like online application at that time. The man, he ticked my option for administrative services. The second option was for the police service. What did he do? He ruled out the fact that I could have joined the police service. Who was taking this decision was being taken by somebody totally unknown to me. And his reason for ruling it out was that women are not meant for the police service. And what was more horrific later on when I look back, when this interviewer was interviewing me, that I never questioned the fact that someone else was making the choice for my life. Very often, I think when we look back on our own life, and in perspective, when we look at the issues that we have been victims of a gender bias or patriarchy, I think that is more of an opening of the eyes and removing gender blindness from our own eyes before we try to do it on others. And then another game changer was when I went during the service for my master's to England. And over there, Uma Kothari was taking a course on gender, which I opted for because I didn't know anything about it. And that was the Structural Adjustment Program and its impact on women worldwide. And that is the one which made me realize that there are differential impacts of policy. Any policy which looks equal and seems to have no bias against anyone or anything, where is the feedback loop? And this fundamental question persists even today. As many schemes as you have by the government in every sector, every complex intersectionality of gender, if anybody opts for doing research on this, I will be more than happy. Where are the feedback loops? Because when we sit and frame policy, we have a certain outcome in mind. And we also know that while visualizing that outcome, we will have to create targets or outputs and also make sure that in the process, our policy doesn't become like a Chinese whisper, that what we intended as an outcome gets lost in the process or lost in translation. We live in a very diverse country and it can easily get lost in translation. So this particular aspect has perhaps not been examined enough. And then come the elections, and then come changes of policies every 5 years. And very often these are old wine in new bottles. Nobody seems to have researched the fact that when we change these policies with new names and this old wine goes into new bottles, what exactly happens? There is a cost. Governance has a cost. Until date, we have only progressed toward the Public Service Guarantee Act, which guarantees only one thing in governance, and that is you will get timely services. Does it guarantee you the quality of service? Does it guarantee you the fact that almost all states have the Public Service Guarantee Act today, which is not as used as the RTI? And we are living in an era of entitlements. So are we forsaking our entitlements due to ignorance? Or are we forsaking our entitlements because our voices are not heard? And in this category of beneficiaries, women's voices are often not heard. Women themselves don't speak, and women themselves have become invisible. So yesterday was actually a game changer, seeing women highly visible on television screens and becoming the pride of the country. So this is exactly the conundrum which faces a policymaker, that when you're trying to do good, and the biggest challenge with a policymaker is we have a limited tenure. If I start designing a policy, by the time I finish drafting it, and when it is launched, at that point of time, I may be transferred to another department. So it's almost like, you have conceived the baby, and at the time of delivery, someone else takes over. And will the outcome be the one which you desired or not? There has to be someone at the top who is very bullheaded and determined that the outcome which was envisaged or written down in a budget speech happens. And perhaps keeping this in mind, when in 2005, when the women's component plan in India, which was about 30%, was actually being converted into something called the gender responsive budget. That was designed at that point of time. I remember going for a workshop and coming back absolutely certain in my mind that Himachal, which was considered one of the better states as far as women's empowerment is concerned, that it must have a gender responsive budgeting policy. And that is a time when I said that, like a bull in a china shop, I went about thinking and putting on my thinking of how to do it. Fortunately, I had the budget department with me, finance budget. And that is the time when I went to my boss, who was not just an IIT and an IIM. He had done a stint in Washington. He was a very enlightened, very intellectual gentleman. But I must share his reaction. When I said, sir, let's put this into our budget speech for the CM this year so that it becomes policy. He took one look at it, felt that, yes, it is good. But at the same time, after that, that particular paragraph started becoming my agenda. He had completely disowned or had nothing to do. There were so many paragraphs, so many policy initiatives in the budget speech. But when it came to GRB, gender responsive budgeting, even when we went to talk to the chief minister, he says, okay, sir, now Purnima will explain. This is her agenda. anything to do with women, and when we are talking of gender and development, it cannot be just a woman's agenda. It has to be owned. So the question arises, where is the ownership? And if that doesn't exist, then the current slide that you're seeing, this kind of inequality will persist. When we don't even own the fact that a change is to be made in men and women and in their mind space, this is the reality, this power walk that you see. Who is the powerful one in this? The woman is carrying the burden. Is this a level playing field? And more than anything else, you know very well who's going to win this race. He's the one with a smile on his face. She's the one not only handling that burden on her back, look at the expression, it says it all. And she has a little girl who is not only running the race at a disadvantage, but also the fact that this little girl whose role model is this mother, how will she grow up? What will she believe in? So what is gender equality? These approaches to equality have been done before, but just in order to refresh our memories, what we end up doing in the government is a formal equality approach. And that is what budgets were delivering till now. That there are benefits in the budget for everybody, irrespective of categories, except for maybe SC, STs, OBCs and others, but women were never a category. So in this particular picture that you see, this formal model of equality is providing food, it's providing water, but there are some people who are not getting it. And it is because of something beyond their control. The bird has a beak, and you can see that on the side, this animal also cannot get to that. So are we gender blind to the fact? Are we not outcome oriented? And that outcome, whether it is reaching out to everyone, is exactly the question which faces us when we try to design gender interventions. So then how do we get about it? And I think Nirbhaya case is probably the best example of this protectionist approach, that many people post that traumatic event said that, okay, if girls want to be safe, women want to be safe, they should not venture out at night. So this protectionist approach says that, okay, we are providing development and interventions for you, but you have to protect yourself. I'm not saying that it is wrong. I am saying that we have many further improvements to be made. And those improvements lie in providing that protection so that there is a level playing field, so that one doesn't have to hold back. In this particular picture, you can see that that bird representing a woman has been held back in the cage, because rather than challenge the gender differences and stereotypes, we bar the women from doing certain things in their own interests. So how does GRB address that? That was a question. So what is the corrective approach? That there has to be a positive bias to correct this historical anomaly. So if night work is involved, then the environment should be made safe for women to work. And I'm not saying that until it is made safe, you must go helter-skelter without bothering and then only place the blame at the doorstep of the government. One has to be cautious, one has to be wise. But then what are the outcomes that we are targeting? What is the work that we're doing? What is the roadmap that we are building? That is the question. And the roadmap for equal opportunities, it goes through a very tedious process of invading the mind space of men and women, and many men who are decision makers, policy makers, and to prove to them that women have been historically excluded, and then to give them a level playing field is the only way to have a fair evaluation of their work. So, for example, the Mission Shakti in 2022 National Creche Scheme, it was revised and subsumed as part of the Palna scheme under Mission Shakti. The aim was to provide daycare facilities for children from 6 months to 6 years, because these working women must get a chance of putting their best foot forward, but they cannot get rid of the biologically imposed role playing that is upon them, and to improve not just their working atmosphere, but also to improve nutrition and health status of children. So, but what do we find when we try to get a feedback on this? The outcome is between 2015 to 20, this is more than 70% functioning creches were shut down. So thank God that the scheme has been revised. But then I think the jury is out to see how far it succeeds to bridge the gaps which are there in the earlier one. And that Manrega, 50% women force is affected by the close down of these creches. So interventions become a yo-yo. You go forward and you go backwards. Government change, then also schemes go forward, schemes go backwards. And this is the dilemma of a policymaker. So this another picture which shows that, okay, we have budgeted for everyone, we have brought food for everyone, but go get it from the tree. Now, how many of these animals or categories can actually get it from the tree? So this kind of provisioning is not adequate. It is not sensitive. It is not substantive equality. And that is exactly what we are trying to correct. But all is not doom and gloom. So what we need to do is substantive equality approach. And this I'm reiterating, although this has been done already, that equality of opportunity should pervade the policy that is being framed. Equality of access, equality of results, and that will take into account diversity that exists, not just in our country, but within even the category of women. The differences, the disadvantages, the discriminations, and affirmative action has to be taken. The differences are not real. These are real differences. They're not just deep social constructs. Some are biological differences, and some are differences which have been deeply embedded by society. Recently, we must have seen the pink booths in elections, pink police jockeys, though I'm quite averse to the word pink being, again, part of the gender language. But let me assure you that when I was just talking yesterday to one of our first women officers in a very remote area called Pangi, she's a resident commissioner, first woman resident commissioner of Pangi. So I was debating this very issue with her, and she says, ma'am, it is good that we have this provisioning. It may be one which is more for optics, but it definitely engenders a lot of confidence in the women who are manning those pink election booths, or the presiding officers in an all-women election booth. And then there are police chowkis which are manned by women. Initially, they're hesitant that they're left to do everything themselves, but then suddenly they realize that they have to take responsibility. And that is why it is very heartening to see women in the front. But at the same time, the kind of difficulties that they encounter back home, that tells another story. So how to change the entire scenario to be able to make them feel empowered, not a struggle, not super women. We need normal women with normal workspaces, and we don't need to normalize differences or biases, which can be horrific at times. So equal treatment to equality of outcomes. Let me share an example, which was, I was fortunate to have gone to Sweden for this course, and we were taken to this town of Malmö. We were taken to the town planning committee over there. It was astonishing to see the kind of citizen participation that they have, and Sweden is known for that. So in the town planning in Malmö, they recounted to us that when they were redesigning a part of the city, and they decided that they are going to have houses over there, they had kept women's concerns uppermost because a lot of burden, unequal or equal, is handled by the women. So they took into account, just one example that they gave was that they took into account the fact that if women are handling, let's say, garbage disposal, which they dispose into 5 bins, plus they're taking the child to a kindergarten school, plus they have to buy groceries and they have to come back. So without even having dug up even 1 centimeter of the ground, the town planners over there had gotten the city together, representatives of the city, to be able to tell them how they're planning to do up the city. What is the architectural plan, spatial plan for that? And they were making sure that apart from telling that, okay, these are the natural elements, light, water, wind, etc., that we're going to have roads here, we're going to have habitation here, these are the kind of houses. They had even worked out how many steps will a person have to walk, and normally that is the woman, to be able to do all 3 things together. For instance, disposal of the garbage, taking the child to school, and on the way back, perhaps buying groceries before she gets ready to go to her work. And so the location of kindergarten schools was also firmed up, keeping this necessity in mind, keeping the timelines in mind, keeping the unequal burden in mind. Now, that is perhaps, despite the fact that there was not substantive equality, but they were working towards that equality. And while they were doing this, and they were discussing the design of the houses, one question came up. Malmo, incidentally, has about 170 ethnic groups, which is a lot to handle. And surprisingly, they had ensured that a maximum number of ethnic groups are participating in this planning process. So Sweden has been home to many of the refugees. So the Somalian women, they raised an objection and they said, we don't want kitchens in our we don't want windows in the kitchens. So these people were surprised. What does windows have to do with the kitchens? We thought that they were very nice for the light in the kitchen. You can put flowers in the windowsill. Those women said, well, we have to wear a hijab if somebody can see us. This is our cultural norm. And most of the time we spend in the kitchen. So we don't want a window, so we know that nobody can see us. Can you believe it that considerations were drilled right to this level? Is this the kind of rigor that we do to keep women's issues and sentiments in mind? I think we have a long way to go. So the substantive equality approach perhaps will have to work towards this. The complex theory of change, which in fact we were discussing in HIPAA, in the Himachal Institute of Public Administration, that how the intersections between the informal system and the formal system, and the change which can be an individual change and then a social change, and then government trying to bring about a systemic change, whether it is in gender, whether it is in any other sphere. How do we bring about a difference? So in HIPAA, when we were going to celebrate 8th of March, we decided to have an exercise in which we had already mapped the outcome that we wanted. And I'm a firm believer that governance has a cost attached to it. And when we see so many examples, and in this forum also, we are sharing so many examples, let us share with a vow that we will replicate wherever possible the good examples that we can customize and put into action somewhere else. Because replication comes at a lower cost, but mindless replication can be expensive. So it is very important that we don't put old wine into new bottles, but we change and we reform. But this complex theory of change is not easy. So when we were doing this particular outcome-oriented gender workshop, we had decided that we have capacity building modules in Masuri Academy in Labasna. So what we will do is that we will simply customize them to the needs of Himachal. But what are those needs of Himachal? So in the sphere of education, health, violence against women, and panchayats, we had 4 groups which included practitioners, academia, and we had a group of NGOs. So these were working together on each of these modules, and that was one of the most productive workshops that we have had, because we could then blend and customize the Labasna modules for capacity building within Himachal to be able to carry out the work over here. What was interesting is that we had to sensitize everybody on gender issues, and we had just touched the surface of this. And my most, jubilant moment was when 2 men who were training, one was from education department, the other was from Khadi board. They actually stood up and said that, ma'am, you have done the state level workshop and you're going to be doing 2 district level workshops to engender this kind of change over there also. Can you take us as volunteers for doing it over there? We promise to bring you 2 projects from our departments to be able to engender them wherever possible, because you've opened our eyes. So the gender blindness that they had experienced, but nobody had told them, it was it had been normalized over centuries. The women and their family also never complained. Nobody said, but these 2 men, within the space of those 2 days, they got up and admitted to everybody in that hall that we have been gender blind, and unwittingly we have perhaps perpetrated many wrongs on the women that are in our family and around us. And this is the only way that we can remedy that wrong. So please allow us this opportunity to become trainers at the district level. Now, that was a very heartening change, and that is the kind of outcome that one is looking at when one is doing policy. So women-centric approaches are not so easy. And I must share with you that very often we think that when we get into the civil services, perhaps we have found an escape velocity like a rocket, and we have perhaps reached a level where nobody can touch us. But this very recently, a subdivisional magistrate in one of our districts, in a subdivision in one district next to Shimla, she shared, and this was reported in the newspapers also, that as an SDM, she was attending this puja ceremony in a very famous temple over there. And when the Havan had to start, and the ceremony had to start actually, the pujari over there objected to her presence. And that is happening in a state like Himachal, where women are definitely considered more empowered than others elsewhere. This was shocking. She stood her ground. She didn't get embarrassed. She was not overwhelmed by this objection. In fact, the Pandit who was there, the older Pandit, he told the younger one that not to raise this objection. But this girl was determined. She took the matter to the DC. And what is surprising is that the DC also actually pandered to the religious community and said that perhaps you should have listened to them. She stood her ground, took up the matter with the chief secretary, and ultimately she was victorious. So it is not as if it's a cakewalk for having entered the civil services or somebody having entered the defense services. What lies beneath the struggles that one has to do to become a trailblazer are not easy. So when governments launch schemes, I think we have to partner in making sure that those schemes are deconstructed, simplified, and be able to reach the beneficiary, the intended beneficiary. And that is why I feel that all the fellows on this course are actually ambassadors of this change. And if even one thing strikes a chord with them and they can make it a part of the research, I think half the battle is won. It is very heartening to know that when we say that women are probably lagging behind on STEM and on technical know-how, it is the landing point of Chandrayaan was actually determined by the women. And that success story, to a great extent, perhaps not even written about so much, is attributed to women. So accessing control over outputs and income is very intrinsic to a women-centric approach, because perhaps this is the last bastion to change, land ownership. And a number of women suffer on that account. I know for sure that very recently when I'd heard about Trichy, in Trichy, there was this group of women living in a village and with having absolutely no voice. They had, in fact, the dumping of all the garbage waste was done right in the heart of the village. Now, the women knew that everybody knew that this is leading to sickness, ill health, etc. But nobody was concerned about building toilets because men could go anywhere. The jungles were not very far. But the women realized that with illicit lumbering, the trees were being cut and they had to go. They took about 3 hours to go together to the jungle and come back. Now, this ritual was taking up 3 hours, was becoming a safety concern. And in any case, it was a health hazard to have that much of waste in the middle of the village. So these women had absolutely no recourse. They actually felt helpless until an NGO arrived. And the NGO was armed with money as well as resources otherwise. And they asked the women, what exactly do you want us to help you with? They also were not clear and they wanted the women actually to voice their concerns. And as it so happened, the women initially thought that they were just being asked for cosmetic reasons, but then their confidence was built. And when the NGO could actually talk to them, they realized that these women are the ones who want change. So these women said, we want toilets in the heart of this place so that this garbage dump is removed and replaced by toilets which everybody can use. So they set about designing the toilets. And when these toilets were to be designed, the women realized that we will be saving those 3 hours, and women by nature cannot be sitting idle. So they decided to ask this NGO that can we slightly change the design? Can we have a community hall on top of the toilets? So they decided to have better foundations. And what would they use the community hall for? They decide they're going to use it for skill development classes, tailoring, stitching, etc., so that they can have income generation. Now, this is the way that when you ask women, when they have a voice, when they start speaking, they start thinking in spatial ways, because responsibility for anything comes naturally to them. And that is the time when they realize they can use this resource. And resource use is fundamental to anything that we do. Today also, when we are using this time and we're talking to each other, we are both resources. And IMPRI has brought that resource together. So in Trichy also, when these women decided that we have 3 hours as a resource, we can use it. So skill development was something which they wanted. When they created this room, and then they realized, who will keep the toilets clean? So they collected money to pay for one person to keep it clean. And then they realized, who's going to supervise if the person doesn't clean it? And then again, they huddled together. And the answer they found was that perhaps the best way to do it is that create a room through the toilets and give that room free of cost for that person to stay. But if the toilets stink, that person's room will stink first. This is a local solution which no global person could have answered at not a national level, not a state level, not at a local government level, but at a very, very community level. So this is how involving women has always been a win-win situation. I remember a slum program over here in Shimla, where repeatedly, this was under Rajiv Awas Yojana, and where we were in a hurry to bag the first amount of money. It meant 32 crores that we were to get. And I remember that sending my team over there to say that, okay, have you made the committees? Have you designed the houses? We have to send the response to Government of India to get the money. And these people would come back flummoxed because they were thrown out of that area, slum area, and they said, we don't want you here. We know how to design. They had no answers. Then we put our heads together and I said, just show me what is the composition of the team that you have made in the slum area. Believe it or not, there was not a single woman on that team. The moment we put not 50%, less than that, some women on the team, suddenly things started moving. Suddenly design of houses started coming up innovatively. Suddenly the women, they were putting in their concerns that, okay, we have married children, or we have younger children, or we have older parents in the house. So what should be the toilet like? Where should be the wash basin be? And when the team was sent to Government of India, not only did we get our 32 crores, but we also got appreciation for the fact that we had engendered the scheme. And that was the first time that we realized what difference it makes to have women involved in every committee. Very often, when we are pursuing outputs, we are in the thick of the process pursuing outputs. We forget that outcomes actually can be visualized and the desired outputs can be achieved, targets can be achieved if we don't lose sight of the outcome. And that is very important. Very often in a rush, because of time frames, because of absolutely insurmountable targets, we forget that. So targeting the goal building of women's capacity rather than only their livelihood enhancement, I think there can be no better example than Kerala's Kudum Shri, but that will come another time. So Himachal Pradesh's gender record is a mixed bag. In fact, when I remember going for this GRB workshop, and when I raised questions about gender budgeting and how we could do it in Himachal, the Secretary Women and Child told me, oh, Himachal is doing very fair, very fine. Now that was sentiment analysis on her part. If Himachal is doing very well, you don't have a problem. We should be talking about states like Bihar and Rajasthan and UP. So I said, ma'am, you just circulated certain documents. And when I see the graphs in that document, Himachal's curve is flat and it is actually inclined downwards. So our future is not good. So kindly allow me to, I'm sounding like a fifth columnist, but even at the risk of that, I would like to see Himachal ranking up and not down. Well, Himachal is ranked third in Women's Empowerment Index, calculated on 14 variables. And the Public Affairs Center in Bangalore actually ranked our state number 1 in 2017 on 80 variables. And what they remarked very well was that we had the lowest levels of social, economic, and gender disparity, and one of the highest per capita incomes in the country. And Himachal was ranked first among the 12 smaller states. By small, we meant was less than 2 crore population. So that is a time when on getting this award in 2017 and then again in 2018, where we were ranked on 100 variables, not just 80. And they were still surprised at how Himachal is doing so well. Public Affairs Center Bangalore was the first one, not the Center for Good Governance, neither in Delhi nor in Hyderabad. None of them had come out with any ranking index to rank states. And today, I'm very glad to report that not only did we come first, but we asked for reasons why we came first. The reasons were that all the data resided with us. All reports were going to Government of India from our districts, from our states, but we had not connected the right dots. A lot of research is actually, as was being mentioned by Dr. Simi, what is it that you want to research? What are the parameters of that research? What is the scope of the study? What are the outcomes that you're looking at? And that is the time when you ring fence that, then you realize that what is it that you're looking out for? And we realized that we wanted to know what are the dots that we are not connecting to know how well we are doing. And if we are doing well, why not go public with it? It will bring an investment into Himachal. It will give a fillip to the state in many ways that we can't even imagine. And we are dependent on power, we are dependent on tourism, and women in any case look good. And it was only in 2011 census that we realized that what seemed like sentiment analysis about Himachal was certainly not true. Himachal, incidentally, boasts of 974 women per 1,000 men, which is far better than the All India average of 940 women for 1,000 men. And yet, the 2011 census revealed something which Himachal did not know. The 0 to 6 girl child, on an average, the All India average is 919 girl children to 1,000 boys. Now, in Himachal, our average was even lower than 919. It was 909. This was a shocker. Because with an overall average of 974 women, it makes it even worse that the 0 to 6 category girl children were averaging only 909. Now, this was definitely a matter of concern. So wherever there is secondary data available, let's not tinker with it. But yes, where a concern like this emerges, it necessitated ring fencing that concern. So did we stop at that figure and start worrying about and doing carpet bombing in policy? No. We went further, we drilled deep, and we found that this alarming level of possibly feticide, we couldn't put a finger immediately on that, but it was because of 5 bordering districts, bordering Punjab and Haryana. Those are the districts where the 0 to 6 age group, girl children, the numbers were reducing at a rapid pace, and that pace was even faster than Haryana. And that was a shocker because Haryana was known nationally for the fact that girl children were at risk. But one of our districts, Una, was even lower than Haryana. So now when we ring fence, we sharpen the problem area. It is only then interventions can be reasonably designed to bridge that gap. So as a researcher, this is a very important concern. And let me assure you, data tells its own story. And today, data is the new oil, and I will come to that. So it was only then that, prior to that, we had gender responsive budgeting, which I had introduced in 2006. And without much thinking, had allocated 30% budget, which was also the women's component plan for India. So we didn't go into the hows and whys of why we are doing 30%, but we allocated that. So the next step was making everybody understand what is GRB. Now, at that point, I realized we need to find a home for gender responsive budgeting. Even Government of India had it only in a few ministries, and no home had been found as yet, except that it was planted with planning department. So planning commission was handling this subject, and finance was overseeing it. So I had finance, so we could thrust it down the throat of planning, but we instinctively felt that the women and child department was the best one to handle it. But they were not willing to take on this new challenge. Nobody wants additional work in the government. So it was not until 2007 that this task was given to women and child. And GRB, how is it handled? It permeated to 18 departments. But the reality was that it was given like an unwanted orphan, an additional charge to some obscure person. And then it was only that, after 1 year, like Rip Van Winkle, you wake up and you say, okay, I think we need to account for the 30% budget. How have we used it? So just before the budget exercise, the cells would wake up and give some sort of a report. Today, I'm very glad to say that when Government of India has introduced gender responsive budgeting in 2005, they had also introduced something called the Statement 20. When I mentioned that feedback loops are missing, this is exactly what I meant. That one has to have the rigor of research to be able to find that is that feedback loop existing, first of all? If it is existing, what is the quality of that feedback loop? Is it being used the way that it was intended? Now, even Statement 20 is a subject of analysis, and it could be analyzed as one of the research subjects. Statement 20 has two parts to it. It has part A and part B. One part deals with schemes which are, in any case, 100% women targeted. The second part deals with schemes which have up to 30% target for women. One of them is the important flagship scheme of Manrega. Now, this becomes a very important area of research. What impact are we getting? Is Statement 20 a roadmap? Will analysis of Statement 20 or the budget spending of 30% that is being done under gender responsive budgeting, is it leading us anywhere? Is it leading us to the desired outcomes? And in that, obviously, we will have to go down to the flagship scheme, which affect health, which affect education, which affect financing of women, which affect so many other, now, of course, things like IT, climate change, so many other issues. New areas are emerging. But if we don't build capacity to analyze the data that is being generated, now, let me tell you, Statement 20 initially was only a statement like any other budget statement, which started giving data on how much money has been spent out of 30%. That makes no difference. What was that gap which was existing, which that money tried to fill? Where is the physical proof of that? Now, that is something which Statement 20 has to answer even today. Now, there is something, a Statement 13 and a Statement 20. So these are the kind of gap areas, new gap areas, and that fortunately is, I would say, if you have to call it level, from 0 level, we have come to level 1, that okay, there is a GRB, there is a Statement 20. Now the new area of, analysis emerges is, where is a gender audit? Where is the Statement 20 telling what is the real story on ground? Reality bites. So let us take the bite and let us bite into it and find out. For instance, when we have 50% reservation for women at the ground level, in Himachal, we tout this figure very proudly that with 50% reservation in our local bodies, we have 54% women elected, which means that 4% women have actually gone out there and challenged men on their own ground, and on their own steam, they have gotten elected. Now, despite these more than 1 million women getting elected to the local bodies in India, there is a new terminology that I came across. Pati Pradhan continues. Now, I believe there is a Sasur Pradhan also. So let us scratch the surface and see that 54% looks lovely on paper. But what is the reality behind it? Has this data been engineered? Is it true? Where is change still required to make it streamlined? So as we go streamlining each sector, or at least a part of the roadmap, or at least from one milestone to another, we would have made progress. Now, I'll tell you another thing, which again, as Director Urban Development, this is about more than 12 years ago. Now, of course, it's about 16 years ago, that elected representatives for urban local bodies, as we all know, they have a fixed tenure for 5 years, whether it is for panchayats and whether it is for urban local bodies. Now, with 50% women's reservation, that was not the only reason. I came across this thing that most of the elected representatives seem clueless about what are their responsibilities, and more so the women. So that is the time I inquired that was there any effort to make any kind of capacity building and training manuals for these elected representatives who have cost the taxpayer so much of money during the elections, and they are here for 5 years and they're here to stay. So are they going to contribute to the well-being of the citizens, to local governance, or are they going to be a nuisance and a burden who will be nosing around into what the secretary of the panchayat or the executive officer is doing? So, and trust me, under the law, they couldn't have pleaded that they don't know anything about their roles. So ignorance is no plea under the law, and the lawyers in the group will agree with me. They couldn't have taken this plea, so it was our bounden duty to bridge this gap and give them some training. So I discovered this institute in Chandigarh, CRID, and we sat together and decided that we will have, initially, let's not overload them. Let's get them to do something which is called a orientation course. Because this human resource, like any other resource today, cannot be wasted. And in a resource-starved world, we need their help. We need to educate them, skill them, to be able to handle their responsibilities well and execute the role that the Constitution or the law has conferred upon them. Now, the first problem that we came across in this was very interesting. The women over here who seem empowered, etc., they said, हम तो अपने गांव से बाहर नहीं गए. We have not stepped outside our villages or outside our district. So how do we go to Chandigarh for the training? And that is the time when I had extra resources. I said, okay, will you be comfortable taking your husbands with you? That they had agreed. So we decided, let us use this opportunity that we will give them training, and by sending the husbands with them, let the husbands sit in the trainings also, let them get the field visit also of Chandigarh to see how it is spatially designed and what are the responsibilities which devolve upon these elected representatives, and let them get an insight into the reality and the serious nature of the work that these women have to execute. Perhaps it will give them some modicum of understanding that in the home and the hearth, the woman will need some help to be able to execute her responsibilities properly in the work sphere and in the public at large. This scheme was very successful. But unfortunately, now, 10 years down the line, I learned that all the training has been abandoned. This training was not meant as a one-time training. This is something for every batch of elected representatives who come every 5 years. So again, as I said, policy has to find a home. Policy cannot be an orphan. Policy has to have sustained continuity to have any impact whatsoever. But if we think that skill development is something which we can set aside, I think we couldn't be further from the truth. So my close encounters with gender have been many, and there are some which I really want to share with you. And these are reactions from countries which we thought were number one on the governance list. After completing my course in Sweden, when I came back, and that very, very tragic incident of Nirbhaya happened, the call that I got from my mentor in Sweden was actually enlightening for me. He asked me one question. He says, it was shocking to see what has happened, but please don't carry the impression that all is hunky-dory in Sweden. It is not as if all is well. It looks well. We are number one on many items, on many lists, many indices. But the fact remains that these sort of incidents happen here also. But what is remarkable in India is the outpouring of the number of men on the street to support Nirbhaya, to support her family, and to ensure that those men get the gallows. And this is something he found strange, because he said this much support from the men will not be forthcoming in Sweden. I was shocked. Then it set me thinking, there is a patriarchy which operates on men also. For instance, the boy who was accompanying her, perhaps somewhere he also must have been made to feel small that he could not protect her. That is a part of patriarchy as well. So there are many elements which then started appearing as my gender lens improved. I remember seeing there was a gender course which we had organized in HIPAA again, and one of my colleagues was attending it. He was actually just coming for another course. We were having lunch together, and there was this lady IS officer from Kerala who had come as a resource person, When we were sitting at lunch, this gentleman says to me, "You're wasting time on having gender courses, gender trainings in Himachal. Why are you organizing these?" I said, "What is the objection that you have to our organizing these trainings?" So he says, "Well, there is no gender problem in Himachal. Women are so empowered." I said, "Okay, let me ask you one question. And please don't mind if I ask you this question. It may seem personal to you. Who owns, you have a lot of land, your own personal land?" He said, "Yes, I have. But what does that have to do with gender?" So I asked him, I said, "If you have land, then tell me who owns it, in whose name is it?" He was a little taken aback. He said, "I own it." So I said, "In that case, your wife is okay with it?" Now this guy, he was actually getting angry. So he said, "What do you mean your wife is okay with it?" I said, "Just please answer the question." He said, "Yes, my wife is fine with it. Why should you be asking that?" I said, "Well, just imagine if the land was owned by your wife. Would you be fine with it?" Well, his answer was in the fact that he got up from the lunch table and did not talk to me for the next 6 months. So,
That is the,
yeah, so this indignant reaction from an IS officer.
correct.
I mean, so this is what I'm trying to say is just being in the civil services is no guarantee. Mindsets carry everywhere. And I'll tell you, that is why institutions fail women very often, because they're manned by human beings. And those human beings carry their own mindsets, they carry their own biases. If they are only turning the lens on themselves first, it is only then, and their sensitization is extremely important. That is why I'm horrified at the fact that trainings have been revoked. There are so many instances where gender has played a role, and I have tried to recall all of them to be able to share for this reason that जो दिखता है वो होता नहीं और जो होता है वो दिखता नहीं है.
Very good.
My receptionist, who was an outsourced person in the Electricity Regulatory Commission, one day came crying to me, and she seemed to be a very brave, frail-looking woman. And she said, "I'm undergoing a divorce, and an RTI application has come to you. So, ma'am, what are you going to be doing with it?" I said, there were so many RTI applications. So I said, "Which one are you referring to?" She said, "Ma'am, this husband of mine, I'm seeking a divorce from him. And he is trying his level best to find out what is my income so that he can tell the court that she doesn't need alimony." Now I had to take recourse, read what is the section 2 on information, what is the information which is private to her, which we cannot provide. And he was trying his level best because she was an outsourced individual. He was trying his level best to get it from the man who had deployed her over there. She had a tough job. So educated women, employed women also are facing this. You can imagine the condition of those who don't have recourse to education or employment and are dependent on other people helping them. So here's another case of, we had in our orchard over here in Shimla, since there was absolutely nobody here to manage it. My parents were going through a very difficult health issue time. My mother had cancer. So that time, there was a couple over here whom we kept as Chaukidar and Chaukidarni. Now, after 1 year of giving them a salary for virtually doing nothing, just looking after the premises, this woman turns around and tells me, this man turns around and says that I'm leaving the job. And we were wondering, how will we find someone else? We had a very busy schedule. So I said, "What is the problem?" He says, "I've got a job in the PWD on daily wages and I'm going there." Suddenly, when this man was not in sight, this Chaukidani comes to me and says, "Ma'am, I don't want to go with him." She had 3 children. The youngest obviously being a son, because in her attempt to get a son, she had got 2 daughters already. And that son preference is a huge thing in Himachal, like anywhere else. So I said, "You want to leave him?" She says, "Even if it means that, I will leave him. I'll stay here. You've looked after me a lot." So I said, "But this is a very lonely area. Will you be able to exist over here?" She said, "Whatever it takes." And then she revealed to me that there is no PWD job, nothing. He just takes the salary that you give. He drinks it all up. There is free education under Beti Anmol hai in Himachal. And this man is not even allowing the girls to go to school. There is free education. Now, this woman was aware that she wanted a better future for her own daughters. So I said, okay, don't eat your words tomorrow. I will support you. And I must say that for 10 years, this woman lived up to that conviction that she had. It was sometimes we had to call the police at night because this man tried to threaten her. He would bring his cronies over there because whenever she got money on the first of the month, we stopped giving it to her on the first of the month then. And he would come to take the money from her. Now, one day she told me that, ma'am, this man is keeping all the money with him. I don't want to go. His mother exploits me and I don't want to stay there. But what he's doing, he has a ration card. He has a ration card and he is using the entire ration of 6 people, whereas we have 4 over here and he and his mother are over there in the village. Now I had to wrap my head around this because I couldn't send her back to him because of the ration card. I couldn't get the ration card out of his pocket. So I talked to the Pradhan and I said, now tell me, this woman is staying here at my orchard. This is one family, they're not divorced. But these 4 people's ration you can give separately here. The quantum of ration remains the same. You split the ration card. So this Pradhan, I must say, was one of the men who really employed his mind to it. And I'm very happy to report. First he said, no, ma'am, this cannot be done. I said, okay, show me the law. And he was a very legal-minded man. I said, show me the law in which it says that a ration card of a working woman cannot be split. So he couldn't show me any law on that. I said, now think of her as a working woman in an urban area. She's posted at my place. She has her children with her and she's working over here. And I want her ration card separately. You can keep the ration for 2 people and make us ancillary card or whatever. And he did that. He did that. Now that was an opening of the eyes for me. That somewhere when, you can read between the lines in the law, and probably that is where we become ambassadors of change if we really apply our mind and hearts to it. It's a different thing that that man managed to steal the ration card subsequently. And now I couldn't have gone into that. And I asked a brother to actually lodge an FIR, etc. So there are so many instances where we are blind. We see things, but we don't look, we don't internalize. One was when you enter Himachal or you enter Shimla, you will see a lot of these women police officers, traffic police, and the women look so smart, wearing this almost like a Stetson hat and managing the traffic with total aplomb, total confidence. One day it just occurred to me that there don't seem to be any toilets over here. So for an 8-hour duty, what do these traffic women do? And it emerged at one of the forums where I was speaking about this issue, that for 8 hours, how do they go? Where do they go? Because there may be a Sulabh Shauchalaya nearby, but I have never seen an instance where the post is not manned by the traffic police woman. So in the audience, there was one researcher. She came up to me and she says, do you know, you have raised a very important point. I said, why? She said, my research on this subject shows that next to the High Court, ironically, there are about 40 police women, who are suffering from urinary tract infection because they don't want to voice the fact that they need to go to the loo and they will be off duty from that point for some time because they may be taken to task for that. So they don't have water. They don't have water and they end up with UTI. Now, it's a different thing that we are now trying to work on this particular issue, and I'm going to be partnering with one of my IPS colleagues to be able to see that can we access the gender budget, and not just for the traffic police women, because we want to club 2-3 categories, and the home budget, home department budget, plus the budget of the municipality here, because even there are bazaris, there are vendors also, so many women vendors. When they bring their stuff for vending on the main market in Shimla, they have to climb mountains. And I don't think they can leave their wares over there and even go to a toilet. How do they manage? Unless there are 3-4 of them and they back up each other. So this is a very real problem, but nobody has voiced it. We sensed it. And we sensed it, and this was ratified by the researcher. So now we are thinking how perhaps the Sulabh Shauchalayas in the vicinity, will map those, and then see if we can have some sort of a space over there where these women vendors can actually lock up their wares. You know, they can lock them up, they need not bring them up and down. And when they come, they can just unlock them. So that Sulabh Shauchalaya becomes a place where it is the toilet facilities available, and plus they are encouraged, and they are also encouraged to speak. They don't have to be shy about saying that they want to use the loo. I think we've all gone through this. In fact, I must share with you that Korea had a system, of course, ancient, where women, when they go to the loo, they were supposed to be ringing a bell so that you can't hear them urinating. One can't even think of a more ridiculous thing, that the sound of a man urinating or a woman urinating, there is supposed to be a gender difference in that also. Well, it seems as if toilet issues, I mean, I could do another toilet prem katha based on the toilet issues with gender. In the secretariat here in Shimla, it pains me to share this experience, that we have the conference hall where all the important meetings are held. Outside the conference hall, there is a unisex toilet. Why I'm sharing it is that making change happen is not easy even at our level. So that unisex toilet doesn't have a bolt from inside, and it is designed in such a way that on the right-hand side, you have 3 men's urinals. And as you look straight ahead, then there is a toilet which women can use. To the left side, there are 2 wash basins. Now, as a woman, when I had to go inside, I would actually ask one of the waiters outside that, listen, will you just go inside and see there's no man using the toilet? Then he would come back and give me the green signal. Then I said, okay, I'm going inside, but make sure that you are outside, because there is no bolt on the inside. No man comes in while I'm inside. Now, he would do that, and all along I'm worried that when I come out of my toilet, I hope those open urinals don't have a man there, because it will be an embarrassment for both of us. Now, this was becoming too much. And I felt that if I can feel it, what about the other women, other officers in the conference hall? They don't speak. They don't even say. So I decided that if I'm feeling it, let me say it. So I mentioned it to the PWD. It took about 2 months to get a response on such a small issue, where I had said, just cover those men's urinals, that's all. There can be a gate sort of a thing to them. The answer that came was, it is not possible. No reasons were given why it is not possible. The same PWD, which is building central vistas and other things, could not do this small job. So at that time, I decided I'm going to write to the Secretariat Administration. When I wrote to him, and now he was a man with alacrity and wanted to show results immediately. But do you know what was the result? This conference hall was on the 6th floor of the Secretariat. So next day we find that there is a placard saying men's toilet. That unisex toilet had become men's toilet. Women can go to the 5th floor. So this was the solution which was found for the toilet. If this is the kind of gender sensitization that we have, we really need to look inwards. That is perhaps why I think, with this in mind, when I was election observer in Vyara in Gujarat, and I had a parliamentary constituency with about 2,200 people in that, polling stations in that. That is the time when in one of the colleges where we stored the electronic voting machines, and there were students over there. I said, let me make a departure from just election storage exercise and checking EVMs. I asked those students that, do you have hooks or nails in the inside door of the toilets in this college? Just go and check. So we sent a male child and a female child to check. So those students reported that none of the doors had that. And then I had shared with them that this has nothing to do with the electronic voting machines or elections. It has something to do with your everyday life. And I'm taking this opportunity because I don't get to meet you so often. And the thing is that if you have one nail over there, a woman needs to hang her handbag. Now I think even men have crossbody bags, so they need to hang them somewhere. A dupatta to be hanged, and then you use the toilet. But if you don't have one nail or you don't have a hook, where are you going to put those? On some dirty surface. And when you take that handbag back, it will be carrying coliform with it, and of course disease. Now, this sequence of the journey of the disease can be remedied so easily by just putting a nail. So I call it my Keel Abhiyan. And what was heartening was that every time I went to one of the polling stations to check whether they were prepared for the elections, they already knew that madam is coming and that we will be asked whether we have put up nails in the women's and men's toilet in that school. So by that exercise and by that diligence, we actually managed to get 2,200 schools to have hooks behind the toilet doors. So it is small things like this which can make a difference. And probably this kind of sensitization will help us to understand that women experience and use our urban environments also in very different ways from men, whether they're working women, whether they are homemakers, and they have different priorities. They have need for different services and infrastructure. But are their interests and needs as users of cities, are they featuring in urban policy or investments? Affordable housing has been prioritized. Urban mobility has not so far been prioritized so much. Creches, yes, have been prioritized, but let's see what happens in the new scheme. Health clinics, women-headed households, and of course, now we have something called the Safe Cities program. Thank God for that. Where I'm saying urban mobility, think yourself that if we have to design, let's say, a bus stop, do we ever take into account a checklist of how many working women are there, what age groups are around that bus stop? And you'll probably ask me, what does that have to do with just locating a bus stop? Well, what time are they working? What time are they getting home? Do you need traffic lights? Do you need safety concerns? And then when you're talking of buying buses themselves, if those buses have low floors, then it's easier for the elderly to use them, for women with children, pregnant women, those with disabilities. There's so many categories who benefit. So these are voices of concern. How do we get women to ask for their needs? That is one question. And if they do ask for them, which is the forum where those needs can be met? Which is the budget from where we can draw this? And that is the and how to mainstream those. And then make sure that next time you're not the one who's doing all the pushing, put it into a checklist, give it a home, make it automatic. And that is where change lies. Change, there are so many things to be changed that you can't be following only one change. So make sure that it is automated. So where does change happen? At institutional level, policy level, program level. As I said, it's an iceberg. So when you do gender responsive budgeting, what is important is gender disaggregated data. And among all these things that I've just said, I will share only one instance. There's a Swedish snow clearance program, and this is a film which is shown on that. How data tells its own story. Data is the new oil. Now, the snow clearance in Sweden, and I think these Nordic countries and Western countries do analyze the data. And today, big data analysis is a very big thing. And it can really help us to sift and sort and see that from this jungle, which is the path we should be taking. So in Sweden, snow clearance, in one of these small cities, they started analyzing data that in the winters, there were more cases reported of accidents of women, children, elderly, and people who use bicycles. And when they started asking the hows and the whys, they discovered that these people are using the pavements. And in winters, those pavements are snow covered, but they are cleared later than the roads. Now, as luck would have it, 70% of the car drivers on the road were men. So women were using those pavements to leave children, to escort the elderly, or they were using a bicycle. And so more than normal accidents of women users were reported from the pavements. Now, this was not a gender issue. It was not something which was being researched with this in mind. It was simply just data analytics. And by connecting the dots, you suddenly realize that there was a gender problem here, which nobody was asking because nobody was really feeling as it was something targeted or against them. Now, when the story was told, then the municipality actually took action upon it. And without spending one naya paisa, they simply reversed the snow clearance process. They decided that, okay, motorways have to be cleared first. There's no choice about that. But as far as street cleaning is concerned, the pavement cleaning will happen first and the street cleaning will happen immediately thereafter. Or they will buy a smaller machine for simultaneously cleaning the pavements. Now that was it. That was the solution. So solutions can be as simple, provided you can drill deep enough to come to the core, the genesis of the problem. But if you don't solve the problem, what can happen if you don't involve women? So here, an example from Bangladesh, there was an American who went there and he was actually advocating why the arsenic which flows from the Terai area into Bangladesh is a huge problem. It contaminates the water. Now, this American researcher, he wanted to show the villagers there why they should be testing the water there and not using it from some of the wells. When he tested the water over there, he realized that some wells were heavily contaminated and they could cause death, deformation, and not just for one generation, but for many. So now he had a meeting in the village, and in fact, he asked this question, where are the women? So the men said, we are here, we will tell them. Who does the water collection? Women. But they were not there. So when he advised them which are the wells, he went with them, he got the wells marked, that this water is not safe, it has been tested. And then they decided that, okay, where should we have the new wells? So along the highway, they made some new wells, and that was it. So he decided he shall pack his bags and go back. But before that, being a diligent researcher, he decided, let me see the outcome of what I have done. So next morning, he followed the women. He knew the women collect the water. He followed one woman with a matka, and she went to the other woman's house, and the third and the fourth. And he followed them, and horror of horrors, they were going to the same well, which had been marked as arsenic poisoned. And why did they do that? Because when he asked them, he said, do you know this water is not fit for drinking? So they said, who told us? He said, but we had a meeting and the men were told. They said, but we were not told. And after that, they said, we have dug some new wells. They said, we don't use those wells. So he said, why don't you use them? They said, we are Parda Nashi, and that roadside is a highway where men drive, and we can't go there. Cultural construct, restraint, whatever, local customs, we don't go there. So what a waste of money. So this gender boomerang, those women still taking the poison water back home, it can boomerang if you don't involve women. Again, places like Sweden and again Malmo, despite having 172 ethnic groups, they have a system which is in place, institutionalized system of having citizen participation. They have a citizens panel of about 1,200 people representing all sectors, whether it's education, health, industry, agriculture, whatever. Those people have a tenure of 3 years, and those representatives are the ones who will take into account that if on an online campaign program, you have 100 signatures to say, let's have a park over here. Those 100 signatures, the moment they cross 100, they carry weight. They are noticed. The panel will pick those up. The panel will actually deliberate on it, make some recommendations, reject some. Those recommendations are sent right up to the parliament. And they become policy with the minister over there. And the minister also will not execute policy without having the director in place. And Swedish government actually has a 4-year tenure, unlike ours, which has 5 years. But why is there no policy paralysis over there? Is because the directors who are entrusted with the execution of that policy are in place for 6 years. They don't come and go with the government. Moreover, they have a contract. This is called new public management. They have a contract with the government that their deliverables will be quantified, the outputs will be measured, and they cannot be taken to task for something which is beyond the scope of the contract. Now, making governors actually accountable like that needs a lot of data. And perhaps that is the benchmark towards which we have to work when we talk of gender audits to capture anomalies and statement 20s, which will show up the picture provided we are willing to examine and read them. There are so many instances where we say that women in India can't bank. Well, the same thing happens in Sweden as well. There's a W8 group which approached me, I remember, and they said that we have a problem here and we don't understand why. When men ask for 1 million krona loan, the bank entertains them immediately. They'll have the loan sanctioned within half an hour. But when we women, we calculate that, oh, we need only 10,000 krona. How will we pay it back? Will we be able to make profit out of the venture or the self-help group that we're doing? So we'll put together that little amount that we actually need and go to the bank. And the bank will say, oh, maybe you can come back tomorrow, or things like that happen. I thought it happened only in India, but this is what happens over there also. Now, there are some stumbling blocks which you cannot surmount immediately. You can't start saying that the bank must hear those women, despite the fact that they have a small loan. When we brainstormed on that issue, do you know what was the reason? The reason is that $1 million loan, whether it's a man or a woman, the transaction, million krona loan, the transaction cost in that interaction is much less than transacting smaller loans of 10,000 krona each. So the answer which we devised was that perhaps the best thing to do is you mimic the man. You make smaller loanees come together like a cooperative, and they make $1 million which they need to be loaned out by the bank, and go to the bank with that requirement. But managing that loan and its repayment will then be the job of this W8 group, which has brought together all those women. So that problem, that solution seemed to work with them. And I think I haven't still checked with them, but they were very hopeful that they will report success on this. Similarly, in India, perhaps we have tried to actually overcome these problems. There was a slum program in which we had the slum women, and at the closing ceremony, when we asked them, do you want loans? They all said yes. So I had just come back from another sensitization program in Delhi, where the RBI had announced a scheme called BSBDA. In fact, the full form can be looked up, but in brief, it was called the No Frills Loan Scheme, where you only needed an Aadhaar card and specially targeted at women. So if that was the only requirement and you needed nothing else, it should be very easy to get a small loan. So when we asked these women that at the closing ceremony, do you want a loan? They said yes, but we don't have land. So supposing there is, and they said we have no land in our names, and that is, in fact, the bane of gender empowerment is also one of these. This is a very major issue. So now when these women were told that there is a BSBDS no frill scheme where you can just go with your Aadhaar card, do you have an Aadhaar card? They said, yes, we have. So when we advise them, go tomorrow or day after, whatever, but go together. Now that's another sensitization that women normally will not go individually. They should go in a cluster. They feel more empowered. The synergy of the cluster. So when they went there, they were also advised in that meeting when I told them, I said, just write down the name of the scheme and also write down that if the bank manager refuses you, please politely ask him, don't fight. Ask him politely that give the refusal in writing and show him the scheme, that we know that under this scheme, no further formality is required. It worked like magic. Those women went there, and just as we anticipated, they were refused the loan. They were told, where are your other documents? Then they showed that parchi, saying that this is the scheme, and we know that we only require an Aadhaar card in this. And that is the time when the bank manager asked them, who told you? And they said that. And they said, but please give us the refusal in writing. So instead of giving in writing, the bank guys went into a huddle and they sanctioned the loan. So there are process issues which prevent the desired outcome from coming. RBI had made the scheme, but how to get the scheme to the intended beneficiary is another, it's very artful. It can be very innovative. So let us say that, even GRB has been introduced since 2005, only 27 states and UTs, leaving aside 9, they have introduced it. 37 central ministries have adopted gender responsive budgeting, but statement 20 is not being generated or improved in the gap regions to enable an authentic gender audit. So where are we going? Are we in the right direction? Have we meandered from the highway? That is a question we can't answer with complete accuracy. So I'm glad to say that gender budget 22-23 rose by 4.3%, and which comprises 4.9% of the total budget. And budgets are going towards good schemes like Prime Minister Awas Yojana, Safe City, Samarthya, and Manrega. So there is hope. And please remember, when Pandora's box was opened and evils came out, hope was the last thing to come. And let's hope that hope prevails. So what are the semantics of gender inequalities? It is a yo-yo. Like you have the Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam. It has given that much needed 3 decades awaited 33% reservation. But let's see what happens when you allocate quotas and implement the reform by, let's say, 2026. Can you turn this, can poison be turned into medicines by having, pink booths, police chowkis, or will it be tokenism? So ECI figures already, I think Dr. Professor Patel has shared them, that women's representation to be merely 10.5% in parliament and an average 9% of all MLAs in state assemblies, which is less than perhaps Pakistan and Bangladesh. But more than 20 states have 50% reservation at the local level, making 1 million panchayat representatives women. But the constitutional guarantee of affirmative action being sustained, that is the question. So what is a gender intensified disadvantage, like 50% lower wages? A very interesting example that Nela Kabir has given, that when Jayawardene, a Sri Lankan researcher, on an irrigation project, he saw women, but his assumption was so strong that he didn't realize that they were farm women. They actually worked on the farms. He thought they were just wives and mothers. And in fact, in his report, he has written they should be sensitized that after this intervention of increasing the irrigation, they should not squander the well-earned income of their husbands. Now, this is the kind of feeling he had based on his assumption, this researcher. This was the advice given by him. So gender-imposed disadvantage. Now, a Kenyan, again, this has been cited by Nela Kabir, a Kenyan agriculture extension workers, they just couldn't see women. They thought that farm women owners don't exist, whereas there were 40% women-headed farm households. And despite proving their innovative farming practices were superior to the male-headed farms, those guys' eyes had to be opened. So do the interventions that try to change women's condition actually go to the root of the problem? So sometimes the attitudinal dispositions of the judiciary, which is a vital institution, they fail women. Statistics show that in 96, a survey of 109 judges showed 48% believed that husband slapping women was okay, and 74% believed that it was okay women had to face violence. It was shocking, of course, I think last week or the week before, when it was shared that a sitting female magistrate sought the Chief Justice of India's permission to commit suicide due to unrelenting sexual harassment at the workplace, despite having a Vishakha judgment in place. And also it was shared that in an accident case, compensation was made out only for the husband, as it was deemed that the housewife did not do anything. Now, this is exactly what a child says when he's asked what his mother does if she's a homemaker. She doesn't do anything. In later slides, I'll come across what is the total monetization of that not doing anything. Now, in fact, there have been open instances of, brushing things under the carpet. Banning of the film India's Daughter after Nirbhaya. It masked a deep-seated patriarchy among the advocates. But fortunately now, 2 decades after that horrific survey of 1996 of the judges, there has been a landmark observation by the Apex Court of India that there is a bi-directional relationship between women and women's empowerment and economic development. Now, having come from the Apex Court, it's very, very vital. And now, on the 15th of August last year, the Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud, launched a gender dictionary. And I would urge the fellows to kindly go through it. It is available on the net. Because the kind of example cited in that how miscarriage of justice happens, that the language constructs can perpetuate biases, stereotypes, and they're actually horrifying. But as I said, we carry our biases. So look within is the first thing we have to do. Because as you point one finger outside, 3 point back at yourself. November 25 is now observed as the UN International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. But let me not go into those facts because that will mean an entire huge presentation. We have instances, the Khap Panchayat, the Karokari in Pakistan, and of course, Amartya Sen's painful refrain that 100 million missing women, out of which 50 million are from India. And then also, if we have, policies on gender, if this is the kind of execution that is done for them, is that headquarter is asking how our road project impacts on women. What should we say? So these three men, look at the one who's answering and laughing. We'll just add a sentence saying that women will walk on the road. That is the extent of his interest, sensitization, and inclination towards women. Not only does he not see them, not recognize them, not respect them, he doesn't see them in vid, vad, gad, nothing. They don't exist. So that which gets measured gets done. So gender indices has been gone into in detail by Professor Patel, but let me just add my take on this, that the GDI and GEM are two fantastic indices, but it was felt that they masked the gender progress under the Human Development Index umbrella. Somewhere the inequality factor did not get captured. So the loss of achievement due to gender inequality is now being captured under the Gender Inequality Index, which covers dimensions of reproductive health, empowerment, education, labor market participation, and deliberately the income level component, which was in GDI and GEM indices, because it dominated the earned income, and it was felt that it skewed the results for countries with low income levels. So it was excluded in the GII. So GII does not also, one good thing it does, it doesn't cross compensate that, okay, you may have achieved more in one factor, one measure, and not in the other. So all dimensions are given equal importance. The other index, which is perhaps new, Local Government Gender Assessment and Action Planning, LGGAAP by NDI, that is the National Democratic Institute. It can be used by local government staff and officials in collaboration with civil society organization and members of the community to assess how well a local government addresses gender inequality and engages with diverse groups of women. Its twin components are a gender assessment guide and a gender action plan. My question is, and that is a question for the fellows here, how many indices do we need? We need outcomes. Definitely we need output measures. But gender indicators is a work in progress. And moreover, there is another new thing, which is the Panchayat Development Index, which is trying to drill down the 15 of the 17 sustainable development goals and their indicators, and including SDG 5. So now this is now under something called a local indicator framework. So in an inclusive society, SDG inclusion permeation, how to guarantee it? So the pyramidal framework is national indicator framework for SDG, state indicator framework for SDG, and now there is a LIF, local indicator framework, under the Panchayat Development Index. And somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, the same thing is being used for urban areas also. Maybe this can be a topic of research, because having all these matrices of indices is not going to help until we do data analytics. After all, the indices are only telling the story which exists. What is the story? What is the underlying reason, causes? Are they systemic? Are they procedural? They need to be changed. To what extent? And where does the problem lie? So interventions have to be designed accordingly. So gender inequality, as I said, measures health, adolescent fertility, empowerment, education, and labor. So now what is India's rank on this? It ranked 127 out of 146 countries, improving rank of 8 points. So an overall gender gap, which is 64.3%. And Pakistan's rank is 142, Sri Lanka 115, Bangladesh 59, China 107, Bhutan 103, Nepal 116, and we have a long way to go. Iceland at number 1 since 14 consecutive years has closed more than 90% of its gender gap, as compared to global gender gap closing at 68.4%. So economic participation and opportunity in India is only 36.7%. Hence, India has the dubitable distinction of being the 5 lowest performers on women's economic participation and opportunity. So India's women in the labor force is a huge matter of concern. 28%, and now it is even less, 23% point something, versus global average of 40%. So though improved wages and income, the share of women in senior positions and technical roles has dropped slightly since 2022. And mind you, there is a SEBI directive since 2015. And in fact, the deadline for that has expired long since, to have at least one female director on the board of directors. And luckily, the figure has tripled in these many years, from 6% in 2013 to 18% in 2022, as reported by EY. But with 60% Nifty 500 companies having only one female director, it seems as if they just wanted to comply. And the ones which actually have women chairpersons is much less than 5%. So progress is visible. You're just checking the boxes. There's another phenomenon. Fortunately, in India, it is less. In Norway, it is far more. Golden skirts. That means this requirement of having women visible on as directors. So in Norway, women are actually circulating with having 25 to 35 companies on which they are representing. Whereas in India, it's capped at you have to be on just 10 and not more. On education attainment, 96.2 out of 100, the gap is closing. But where are the jobs? The new education policy of 2020, there is a gender inclusion fund, again another area of research. To what extent has it been understood and is likely to be used? What are the action plans being made around it? Samagra Shiksha 2.0, that is an area of research. So health and survival, India 1.9% improvement in the sex ratio at birth. Political empowerment with 44.4% women in local governance. India is one of the 18 countries to cross 40% out of the 117 countries with available data since 2017. So India's GII is at 122 out of 153 countries, lower than many of its neighbors. And but there are government initiatives and investments toward more inclusive growth, social protection, gender responsive development policies. And we hope, the economic survey says that bridging the gender gap by 5.3% in 10 years has happened. Yet, what is remarkable is India's consistent fall in rankings from 87th in 2016 is a matter of huge concern. Per capita income has improved, but progress rate is lower than neighbors, and in certain parameters like IMR, MMR, these are absolutely vital for women and children. It has dropped. India's dropped from 2nd to 5th position vis-a-vis neighbors. The gender wage gap is huge at 55.5%. So India's labor force, as I said, is already at a low. It is the only country with economic gender gap larger than the political gender gap. Findex says 23% of adult women in India lack access to financing services. And this is despite the triangle of JAM, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, and mobility. ORF reports that more than 55% of accounts under the PM Jan Dhan Yojana are held by women. But that is only, it offers an overdraft facility of 10,000 rupees for operating the savings account satisfactorily. So without asking for security or how she will spend. Female customers' lifetime revenue from PMJDY, 12% more than a male. Is it happening? It is estimated that public sector banks could attract INR 250 billion in deposits by serving 100 million low-income women across India. Then what is stopping us from doing it? So are the Jan Dhan statistics matching with this? Data tells its own story. Yet women-led micro and small enterprises remain outside the fold of digital financial services, with only 29% women account holders in India using digital payments compared to 42% of male account holders. 71% of women-led micro, small and medium enterprise with no prior history of formal loans. That means they couldn't have been non-performing assets before the COVID-19 pandemic, reported that they were considered ineligible for Atmanirbhar benefits. So much for Atmanirbharta. So the devil lies in the detail. Women make up 32% of the workforce in the informal economy, including agriculture, and 20% of the non-agriculture workforce. But 82% Indian women are doomed to inhabit the unorganized sector jobs. So from the 287 million registered unorganized Indian workers, women are 52.7% or 151 million women, more than the total population of Russia. So what are the disadvantages that they have to face? They are unprotected by the Maternity Benefit Act. And construction workers, women construction workers, and those with less than 10 employees, welfare boards provide financial aid to pregnant construction workers. But no similar boards exist for women employed as domestic workers, home-based workers, waste pickers, street vendors. They all fall through the cracks. So the Code on Social Security 2020 recommends formation of the State Social Security Board, but where does it fail? This board, which could provide maternity benefits, insurance, skill upgradation, unlike the BOCW, that is the Construction Workers Board, the funds are much less, and the issue lies that when it is a responsibility of both state and center, nobody is funding it. So that is where it's a non-starter. Similarly, now the gender budget fell to 4.4% from 4.7%. So COVID job loss for women in any case was higher than for men. And so Atmanirbharta, do you want Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao? But I feel Beti ko Atmanirbhar banao. So it promises a paltry INR of 500 per month for 3 months to 20 crore Jandhan women account holders. So gender disaggregated data has helped to target this wide outreach to women. So data is important. 18,000 creches in India under NCS, National Child Care, in 2017-18, as I said, it dropped. And this is a phenomenal drop to 4,948 creches in June 2022. And despite the need during COVID, and further fell to 3,578, or less than 5%, 5 per district. The POSH, that is Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act, 2013 mandates local committee formation by district administrations for workplaces with less than 10 employees so that sexual harassment doesn't take place. But again, dysfunctional committees, because funding is supposed to be co-funded by center and state, that is not forthcoming. It is not surprising then that this is the kind of response that women who have lost faith in this researcher who can't see what they're doing. He's asking, how do you make a living? Where do women work? Can't he see where they work? So they tell him, we don't work. So this is not work. Huh? We just stay at home, fetch water, find firewood, look after the children, prepare the garden, do other things, buy food, cook meals, do the household chores, attend women's group meetings, communal tasks, making bricks for the school building, washing, mending, children we bear and raise. So no, we don't work. And he agrees with them. And he said, oh, I just wanted to check if this is the kind of data capturing that is being done. It completely ignores the time use surveys, which 84 countries are using. That the unpaid and domestic work performed by women is critical. I'll skip this slide because we'll come to it later. But bridging this gender gap is going to take a horrific number of years until we do something. Western Europe will take 52.1 years, North America 61.5, Latin America and Caribbean 68.9, and all other regions over 100 years, South Asia to be taking now 195.4 years. And why should we bridge this gap? Is it insurmountable? Well, the reasons are not far to see. Just a sec. So we have to overcome the first thing, that the wearer knows where the shoe pinches, so women have to speak. They can't be voiceless, invisible, disempowered, and lose this opportunity at making a better place, a better world. Voiceless women, how they used to operate, I have seen it firsthand in my friend's house. Her father was the DG police. And when we were at dinner, and I was noticing 4 daughters, 1 son, mother sitting next to father. Any food item which is to be passed to the father, who was at the head of the table, was through the mother. Now, I was a rank outsider, didn't know the culture in their house. And when I saw that uncle had no dal in his plate, so I actually picked up a donga of dal and offered it to him, the bowl of dal. Suddenly, I felt as if crockery is going to crash on the table because there was pin drop silence. I had spoken. And I realized I've done something wrong. It is only later, and auntie looked at me with daggers drawn, took the dal and gave it to uncle. And later I realized that when my friend said, "You were very brave," I said, "What bravado did I show to your police father?" She says that nobody speaks directly to my father. We all speak through my mother. So even dal on the table is offered to him through. So those moms who didn't do anything that time derived their power through the patriarchal mold. But today, when children say mom doesn't do anything, this unpaid reproductive work, as was recently shared, that Iceland women brought the country to a halt by forsaking domestic care work. So women in India perhaps need to do that because they are doing 9.8 times as much unpaid care and domestic work as men. And I must share that in Himachal, we actually estimated this in 2006, and the report showed a fantastic amount which can be contributed, can be counted as contribution to the state GDP, was somewhere near 13%. All unpaid care work equals annual turnover of 10 to 12 trillion dollars. 13% of global GDP, 43 times the turnover of Apple. So in the last 20 years, women's time spent on unpaid care and domestic work has fallen marginally, while men's share has increased by just 8 minutes per day. So at this pace of change, those number of years that we just shared, it will take more than 200 years to achieve equality in time spent in unpaid care work. And WEF actually puts the estimate at 257 years to bridge the gap. Point is, are we willing to wait that long? Or are we going to accelerate the pace of change? That is where SDG 5 steps in. It says when you empower women, all win. McKinsey says that for a multidimensional approach to gender equality, so these 45 targets and 54 indicators across 17 SDGs, gender parity can add $12 trillion to the global economy. And irrespective of the current level of development, when this is added, all regions will get 8% incremental GDP. Can we forsake that? Can we ignore it? Now, this is not a social argument. This is an economic argument for empowerment. So complete gender parity in workforce would add complete gender parity will add 28 trillion GDP by the year 2025, which is an additional 26% of annual global GDP. Can we ignore this? 2020 McKinsey research into more than 1,000 large companies in 15 countries found that companies in the top quartile, now this is proof, those which had gender diversity in the top quartile were 25% more likely to have above average profitability. So it shows up in your balance sheet and trading account than the companies which are in the fourth quartile. Companies in the top quartile of ethnic and cultural diversity, which includes women, were 36% more likely to outperform on profitability. So women account for 2/3 of the 45 million jobs created in 22 OECD countries. But mostly, which are these part-time jobs, lower pays, fewer benefits. So perhaps they can be trained, capacity built, access to financing, economics of seeking gender justice. In 2019, UN put the estimate that it would cost 264 billion to end the worst gender injustice against women and children. So far, how much money has been contributed? Only 16% of the pledged amount has been given. Unshackling women, and despite all this, it's a win-win. We know it, but perhaps we here sitting on this forum can publicize it. These figures are perhaps, they need more visibility. Access to free public childcare in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, increased the low-income mothers' employment rate by 27%. So who wins? Everyone wins. In parts of Zimbabwe, providing access to an improved water source could reduce women's average unpaid care workload by 4 hours per day or 2 months per year, just like those Trichy women who saved 3 hours but not going to the jungle. So research in 6 middle-income countries shows that investing 2% of GDP in strengthening health and care services could generate between 1 to 3% growth in overall employment. And that means overall employment means for everybody. This is 13% more jobs than if the same sum was invested in the construction industry alone. Focus is normally on that industry. And HP having monetized, unfortunately, in 2006, after that, it has happened only once in 2017. There is no sustained work to count women's income. So where women acquire a leadership role through quotas, there is a fear that men will execute those roles, not allow the women to execute. Division of labor or accumulation of unequal burdens as labor for working superwomen in urban areas. As I said, scratch the surface and see what a tough time they have. So Amartya Sen reflects on natality and mortality, which are real threats to female survival. And in fact, he cites a handbook of 1970s on nutrition, which is hilarious. It advocated less calorie intake for women, classifying household work as sedentary work without any evidence to support this conclusion. So what kind of governance? Is it feudal governance versus democratic accountable governance? The latter is a paradigm shift. But what can happen also is that once women actually become beneficiaries of having broken the glass ceiling than others, are they willing to give a hand to others to help them? Or they become a part of that system? That is another threat. So some smart gender financial initiatives are women's empowerment principles by We Empower Asia. 7 principles have been put into place, and 110 companies have become signatories to build more gender sensitive trading and supplying within Asian markets. So gender recommendations have been taken by the Niti Aayog also from the WEP and the UN Investor Consortium. So sex disaggregated data will certainly help identify gender barriers, biases, stereotypes, all your glass ceilings, sticky floors. So empowering women is the most effective way of actually combating climate change. So cutting to the chase, UNFP estimates more than 200 million women in developing countries have an unmet need for modern contraception. And do you know what this will do? Project Drawdown estimates that in affecting climate change, educating girls and securing women's voluntary right to high quality family planning together could reduce atmospheric carbon dioxide by 85 gigatons, making this one of the most powerful solutions to climate change because of population control. So recently, the UN Commission on the Status of Women, CSW 66, it has an online commitments dashboard, which has 2,000 items. You can take a look at that. And it goes towards CSW 67 and adding to the Beijing 95, now it is plus 30 review. It involves youth from member states. That tells its own story. Women make up only 32% of the workforce in renewable energy sector and energy sector startup founders. So the gender wage gap here in this new sector is estimated at 31% and increasing. So they may be employed in the low paid administrative position that in technical, managerial or policy making. So how will policy change? Current supply of green talent, which is now an increasing demand, it will not be enough. Not enough women are coming into those green jobs. So there were in 2021, there were only 62 women considered green talent for every 100 men. So what have other states done? Pragmatic gender mainstreaming through GRB. Kerala analyzed gender gaps to create gender-friendly infrastructure like those low-floor buses. Crisis centers were introduced for victims of violence against them. 700 one-stop centers are in India, but the government aims to set up another 300 centers. And this is a report from 2021. Rajasthan, HP, Haryana have reduced property tax registration fees for women. Gujarat Chiranjeevi scheme has lowered MMR significantly and has incentivized even private doctors for safe delivery. Women and child, in example from UK, childcare allowance to principal carer, not the principal earner. And this is true of Canada as well. Sweden, paternity leave encashment is not allowed, so it has to be availed by the father. The success of Grameen Bank, Bangladesh, and Kudumshri Kerala, I don't think it needs any further mention because it is a success story cited everywhere. So my gender policy crystal ball says that as we inch forward, we need now to take care of an aging population. At the moment, we tout India as the youngest country, 65% below 30 years. How many years will it take to become the oldest country? Have we got an aging population in place? Or will the burden of the care economy continue to increase and an unequal burden? And do you know what is the gender boomerang? The malnourished pregnant women's fetuses, majority being male, they grow up to suffer high cardiovascular diseases. We need to generate gender indicators matrix aligned to, as I said earlier, to GII, SDI 5, NIF, LIF, Statement 20, so that we have gender audit. Data on gender indicators and gaps should be closely monitored and available in real time using AI tools. So big data is the new oil. How do we deploy these AI tools? The war of multiple indices, why should we have too many indices? Can we integrate them? So LIF is targeting now the local area indicator framework, gender and sex ratio, health, education, income generation, leadership and empowerment, participation, crime, social protection. This is far wider a scope than the GII also. So can we align these so that we don't have to, in fact, in the district good governance index that we have developed in Himachal, it's the first state to have done it. And it took me about 4 years to do this rigor. Women figures very prominently, and today Himachal is giving out a prize of 50 lakhs to the district that comes first, 35 lakhs to the district that comes second, and 25 lakhs to the district that comes third on it. So I was also working on aligning LIF to the DGGI because we don't need too many indices, we need results. So the road ahead is we can hitch our wagon to the stars only when we acknowledge the fact, as the ISRO scientist Ritu Kharidal Srivastav said, she's called the Rocket Woman of India. And she revealed the Chandrayaan-3 lunar mission's landing site, Shiv Shakti Point, was chosen by women's site. It's not surprising when you have Malala's, Nirbhaya's, Bhamri Devi's, Bilkis Bano, and Greta Thunberg trailblazing. We can be enthused enough to have a more engendered world. My request to everyone, think woman. A woman-led development will only happen when we imbibe thinking woman in everything we do. Become part of the solution, not just address the problem. Wherever there's a glass ceiling, look for the iron woman behind it. And I believe change begins with me. Patchworking the road as you forge ahead is also a beginning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We're truly grateful for your valuable time. And I believe I speak on behalf of everyone when I say that the way you articulated such complex approaches was extremely engaging for all of us. And it was truly an honor and a privilege to have learned so much from you today. And especially the anecdotes that you had shared with us made it even more thought-provoking for all of us. So thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much. In fact, I am privileged to be here and to be able to share with each one of you, because from whatever I heard in the last 2 weeks, I know that, you know, the interaction here is extremely valuable.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, before we move to the Q&A session, I would like to invite Professor Vibhuti Patel ji for closing chair remarks.
I don't want to say much because she has already made, Dr. Purnima has made such an exhaustive and inspiring statement, because whenever one goes for gender sensitization of IAS officers, all these men, we are men of action. चुटकी में problem solve कर देंगे, but चुटकी में problem, there is no such instant answers, because as she said, how difficult it is even for people with mandated power to change the gender stereotypes. And it's such a, we need pressure from below, we need lateral pressure also. Those who are there, women who are, they have to also speak out, because you can't find another person's battle. We all are fighting our own, we have to fight our own battles. And top level policies, GRs and laws plays they play very important role. And I think your most important this thing is about your comparative analysis of implementation of GRB, how important it is. And even the so-called progressive states also, when you see it with the gender lens, you see such differential reality. And I think that is the vision, and that is the analytical tool you have given through all your examples, analysis, and also the deconstructing some of the concepts which are there in the mainstream, and also bringing the alternatives. I think unpaid care work, very important, and especially in Himachal, that is very first time when I went there, that was the strike, that why women who are 35-year-old, they look like 65, why they have their backs are bent, collection of fuel, fodder, water, kitchen gardening, and animal care, so difficult in that mountainous terrain. And still man would say that we don't have any problem, our women are liberated. Don't we get, after, even as you showed in your slide, that they are seeing women doing everything, and still that person writes that women don't do anything. So I think we have to collectively endeavor. I think that makes our conviction even stronger, that why it is important to all of us have to collectively use our wisdom and our power wherever we are, whichever sector and field, because patriarchy is like an octopus. You remove one tentacle and you showed that how so many progressive, meaningfully so progressive schemes, they were subverted by the patriarchy. No? So I think we have to constantly be the vigilant about how things are played out. No? So very, very, very
I have two regrets actually. I remember opening a gender resources center in HIPAA, thinking that, where else can we do it? And it was almost also that since we have the chance, why not do it over there? And it's somewhere where everybody comes for training.
Yeah.
And when in Shulini University, I was speaking and university was wanting to do things on gender, they rang me up next day that, can you suggest a gender auditor for us? And since you have a gender resources center, now I couldn't have actually told them that the center is simply in name at the moment. It is individual driven. But how many people are actually going to take enough interest into it to make it vibrant? This question was a very valid question by them that, okay, tell us who's a gender auditor and we'll use him because our university gets a better positioning globally. Now, this is a concern which should be there in others also. And I was very happy to have the question. So I didn't have the heart to tell them that we don't have any such data in our center. So I took 2 hours off my office work, rang up I don't know how many places and found a gender auditor for them without telling them that it was not the center which. So we need many more such centers, not just for research, for having addresses of, gender related institutions. But we do need centers where, again, when I went recently to HIPAA to speak over there, and I was one of the lady officers there. She had undergone a terrible divorce and luckily to be remarried happily. But when she was telling other people's concerns, I was only telling her that it's a good thing that now they have given the gender subject to you. When you can feel, where the shoe pinches, you will be able to design the course better. I have no ready-made solutions. I said, I have no ready-made solutions. I know there are women in crisis. I know there are women who are worried about their image. In fact, women in the best of places face the maximum crisis also and they can't turn to anyone. They are in the highest of positions and they undergo quietly gender violence and other things and terrible misogyny and patriarchy silently because they have an image to maintain. And behind that, they can't get that mask off. And where do they go in a crisis? Whom do they reveal? Whom do they pour out their heart to? We need many crisis centers. And I've seen fantastic ones. I don't know how good they're in operation. Well, those were utopian.
But I think the way public sector officers have come, women officers have created their own democratic space where they can discuss misogyny in a day-to-day life, microaggression they face in the office and all, and empower each other. Because if you stay alone, you get witch hunted. So when group of them says, so I think that I found very interesting that women in Oil India, and all basically oil sector, public enterprises. So they have created now women at a managerial and top level, they have created their own platform. So I think similarly we need to.
For want of a better analogy, I would say that's almost like somebody picking up the Me Too movement and then others joining in. So this good if they have created a solution movement and others are joining in. So maybe that could be also documented as a model which others could follow. Because Vishakha by itself is only the beginning, the tip of the iceberg, as I said.
And the mandated power is with the top boss, no?
Yes.
We have only recommendatory power. ICC is only recommendatory power. So if the top boss has a correct understanding, his head and heart both are committed to genders and gender issues and gender equality, he would do it. Otherwise, they would just brush it aside. Why Me Too movement started? Because the institutional structures did not give them justice. Whether it was for the interns in the Supreme Court, High Court and lower court, or in media, or in Bollywood and Tollywood and all the regional film industry or academia. Why Raya Sarkar had to start a Me Too movement within the academia? Because none of the colleges and universities, they could provide this kind of a justice to women survivors of violence when the culprits were powerful. If a principal, vice chancellor, registrar, professor, PhD guide, if they are accused, you don't get justice. Only when class 3, class 4 employee clerk or
when the top court itself has to come out with a book, and I'm so glad to have seen that. There are fantastic examples of miscarriage of
I have
justice.
shared this on the chat, in the chat box. I've shared the PDF, but it's easily accessible. Now they have amended also, because Sex Workers Union had also asked them to demarcate between the two terms, sex work and the those who are trafficked and forced into prostitution. So that amendment has also come. Yeah, it came day before yesterday.
Oh, that's interesting. If you could share that, that'll be great also.
Yeah. Amended document. I'll share. Yeah.
Okay, because that is, these are the kind of landmark changes which perhaps in the research process or in writing the papers could be taken into account, because gray areas subsist. You can't point fingers at these institutions.
Correct.
People, this is the last resort.
Yeah.
So if that also fails you, then where do you go?
Correct. Yeah.
Bilkis Bano is a case in point. They've just redeemed. I think the Apex Court has redeemed itself recently.
Yeah. Otherwise, they were losing face all over. People were losing, all women were losing any faith in such. If this is what's the message you are giving to young women? They will never approach the criminal justice system if this is
what
kind
message
of
are you giving
betrayal
to
takes
anybody?
place.
Anybody for that matter.
Yeah.
That is why the mafias, they dominate only when our democratic institutions fail.
Collapse, correct. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So
I
this
think
is
consistently women's movement and those brave legal activists, they took it up and continued. So finally we got it. So
yes, in unity there is strength. And definitely in the gender space, there is a lot of scope for that.
Yes, yeah. There is a question by Pallavi Berry. Yeah.
That's right. And that's an interesting question because so collecting data around the problem of domestic violence, especially in urban upper and middle class families, we cannot identify the victim and perpetrator unless the crime becomes visible in terms of absolutely true. And that is exactly why people won't speak, nobody will believe. How do we get those women to actually even approach? Is there a crisis center which will help?
Yeah, one-stop crisis center. So most of the data they collect is from one-stop crisis center and the FIRs at the police and NCSP. Yeah, that's
that is true.
Yeah,
but where
only 8 states have one-stop crisis center. Not all states have it.
And how well are they functioning? I mean, what is the required?
So wherever there is a pressure from the women, so this thing, or if it's a public-private partnership with the women's rights organization, they function. Like Sehat is partnering with 13 government hospital, BMC hospitals, then it's working. Or Sneha is partnering with this. So it is basically the whole burden lies on the NGOs. Yeah. Only thing you get a legal sanctity.
More power
System cooperates if you have that kind of support from the public-private.
So that is, initially when I wrote this, should it be a top-down approach or should it be a bottoms-up? Today,
both.
With the top-down having done a lot, or let's say having initiated, the usage of that initiative or that empowerment measure, that will only bring up the issues of how effective it is. The feedback loops are missing.
Yeah.
My basic cry is that the feedback loops are missing. How do we evaluate what has been put into place? For a policymaker, this is a nightmare. How do we know that what we've done is okay? It cannot be okay. The first draft of even a letter, even a love letter, I think the first draft cannot be okay. So this is a very major issue. So when a policy is launched, there have to be feedback loops and people analyzing that. So there are no easy answers. That's a very good question, but I'm sorry, I don't have an easy answer to that. There have to be neighborhood groups which support the woman to have enough strength that, okay, we were in your place, we would also seek help. Otherwise, she'll never seek help. That this is exactly the question which I was facing that day when this girl who was herself subjected to this. So I'm still trying to find an answer. So if actually I'm leaving that question open, if you do find an answer, and this crisis center that you mentioned, I came across somewhere that there is a particular target also for how many crisis centers, and it's not met at all. So I couldn't find the data again.
Wherever there is no pressure of civil society organization or women's movement, it will be handled bureaucratically, top-down, vertical, totally personalized way of doing it.
That is perfectly all right, because the beginning has to come from somewhere. But then how much we can improve on it is the question by using it.
Yeah, correct.
So, but for using it, there is so much hesitation that there is a stigma.
Yeah.
And that stigma prevents the person from seeking any redressal. And that is where holding hands comes in. Who will hold that hand?
Yeah.
So whoever is there to hold the hand, can we publicize that? Can that person be visible to the person in crisis? Because in that crisis, वो अपने बच्चों को संभालेगी, अपनी जान बचाएगी, पैसा इकट्ठा करेगी, पुलिस के पास जाएगी, वहां भी कहीं एक्सप्लॉइट हो जाएगी. आंसर कहाँ है?
बरोबर. और
तो
इसीलिए हम
इसमें
रोज देखते हैं ईमेल ग्रुप हो या गूगल ग्रुप्स हो या व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप हो, कोई जहां जहां भी विमेंस ग्रुप मूवमेंट नहीं है वहां से बहुत ये चंडीगढ़ में ऐसा हो रहा है, कोई है क्या, या तो गोरखपुर में ऐसा हो रहा है, कोई
Yes.
किसकी मदद ले सकते हैं. तो
So-
क्योंकि लोकली वहां सपोर्ट नहीं है तो हाउ टू
लोग वॉलंटियर्स हो सकते, जो ऑनलाइन सपोर्ट दे सकते हैं, क्या वो वॉलंटियर्स हो सकते हैं?
हाँ या और
Online?
volunteers, वो हेल्पलाइन ना 191, वो तो 191 वाला है. एक
But does
सरकार
it work?
है और विमेंस ग्रुप का. हाँ, 191 वर्क्स.
So Pallavi, does that helpline work? Can be found out.
All right.
या और
one.
दूसरे विमेंस
Yes,
ग्रुप्स के भी हेल्पलाइन है और 1091 भी है, चाइल्ड लाइन, और दूसरा विमेंस लाइन है. तो और हर एक राज्य सरकार ने भी अपनी अपनी हेल्पलाइन निकाली.
In fact, ma'am, the problem here is that problem of reporting the crime is there.
Yeah.
You know, even if we approach these helplines and one-stop centers, for instance, I did my PhD research in protective home, and there I found maximum cases of domestic violence.
Yeah.
Victims were there, but the problem was that out of the 100 women who were experiencing, only 20 could be housed there.
बरोबर.
So we are not getting down to the actual statistics around the problem and the scale of the problem, and which is why a policy solution is lacking behind the actual issues.
So
The only
institutional
issue,
okay. So capacity has not been increased to deal with the quantum of the problem, the
Yeah.
extent of
quantum
the
of the
problem.
problem. Yes.
So in that
And
case,
even-
is the data on the number of people who actually use the helpline but have not been accommodated? ये data है?
वो तो नेशनल कमीशन फॉर वुमेन भी देता है और एनसीआरबी भी देता है. तो नेशनल कमीशन ऑफ वुमेन ने कहा कि एटलीस्ट जस्ट ड्यूरिंग द लॉकडाउन दे गॉट 3,75,000 कॉल्स, डिस्ट्रेस कॉल्स, and out of which 25% were of or adolescent girls who were forced into marriage or who were forced into trafficking, and they could reach out to only 12,000. 3,75,000 they could, means they could rescue only or they could provide support to 12,000 women.
Are these statistics or these gaps, can they be listed?
They are there in that's what the National Commission for Women, they issued this statement, and NCRB
so
gives you data classified. Even now they have started giving missing girls and missing women data also, city wise they are giving, because after pandemic that missing girls and missing women has become a major problem due to traffickers, no, because of the economic distress and all.
So when I talk of the LIF framework, then this is one of the concerns in that.
Yeah.
LIF framework, if it can be populated with this kind of data, अभी तो gap है उसमें. It's a new framework.
बरोबर.
So, Panchayat Development Index, and this is an SDG also. It's an SDG 5 indicator. So if this framework can be populated, then we will, under the, because there's a lot of focus on SDG, that we are not performing on SDG. So Pallavi, this can be linked to that. And this non-performance will translate into a national level non-performance. That can be a motivator for getting somebody to work and accessing the GRB fund,
Correct.
that 30% fund. And somewhere, if you analyze the statement 20s also of that particular area, it may not have this.
Even the 100% fund also you can't get, where a Ministry of Women and Child Development Fund is only 2/3 is utilized, 1/3 remains unutilized. Nirbhaya fund of 1,000 crores per year from 2013, hardly 30-40% utilized, that too by 6 or 7 states. There are states after states, 100% non-utilization.
So maybe this is the kind of data which actually could be a fantastic research to show that this is a huge gap area where the need exists. Funds
Even
exist.
740 crores, which for the first time Union government gave for mental health, proposals are coming mostly from Kerala. How many of us have sent, how many other states have sent proposals to NIMHANS? Because that money is monitored by NIMHANS, no? but not, they have not gone. The proposals have not gone. So money.
So the needy doesn't know whether the demand doesn't know whether supply exists.
Correct. That is what.
So this is a demand and supply issue.
Yeah, people they just don't know. They don't send proposal, and there are the bureaucratically Taji is also there. Where I went to Gujarat and I was talking at the Gender Resource Center there about Swadhar scheme. Immediately I was snubbed by the principal secretary. They said if we implement such scheme, women will start running away. If
running away?
Yeah, it will break the family because you have Swadhar. They will leave their family and run away.
So they have to be maintained at any cost.
Principal secretary of the state thinks, so it's so powerful.
I am not surprised at all. I'll tell you why.
I was snubbed.
Yeah. When I tried to propagate the public PSG Act, Public Service Guarantee Act, and I tried to ring fence. In fact, I did ring fence the ease of doing business in that. There were 40 services which could help an industrialist to have easy access to investment in Himachal. That was okay. But when I started advertising the act, and I thought I'll have 6,000 points in Himachal, where we have a QR code and we actually advertise the notifications of 22 departments, I was called by the chief secretary to say, why are you doing this? Because the penalties for non-performance will come out of the officers' pockets.
Oh my God.
So I said, sir, in that case, why don't you do one thing? I'll send you the file that what I'm doing. You please object to it on file.
Correct.
I told him that.
Give it in writing.
And I said, until you do that, this is part of my rules of business allocation. You can't stop me.
Yeah.
But that ensured that I got all the shady postings then after that.
Oh, that's punishment for me. We also have an IS officer here, Manisha Verma. She also gets all shady posting because she asks right questions.
Yeah, we call it Khudde line posting. So I said, you do what you feel like. I will turn around that department. And you ask me wrong questions, you'll get just the right answers. But you have to answer me on file.
Correct.
So, I mean, once somebody has to speak up. There are horrors of patriarchy that we encounter as women, and we are very lonely women, mind you.
Yeah. But then I think different states have different response. Like when I talked about maternity ward being converted into corona ward during pandemic, the principal secretary of Assam, he says, yes, ma'am, it was our fault. We should not have done it. Pregnant women had to suffer so much. But we never realized. We were so panicky about this.
So he admitted that
They said, at least in future, we should see that anytime there is such this thing, there reproductive health issues are essential services. You just can't call them non-essential. Whether it's
his was a response to a contingency.
But he was like reflective, and he says, yes,
he was reflective.
That was a mistake we made.
But here is not a response to contingency. Here is a response that you should not be doing something which can jeopardize men. I mean, mostly it's male officers.
Yeah, but this was the same argument 150 years back when Bapnugar was established in Mumbai. As a result of the suicide report, which was Pushpaben Mehta insisted, and the Viceroy had to commission that study, that why so many women were killing themselves, by jumping into the well and burning themselves and hanging themselves. 1930, I'm talking. Same argument. And as a result of that report, this Bapnugar came, that if you have oppressive situation in your family, this is Bapnugar, means your father's home. That institution was created by the philanthropists and social. They said the same thing, and now women will start running away. It will disintegrate the institution of family.
They are required. So that means that 50 years back, women are needed.
Same language now bureaucrats are using in 2024. And then you are invited to conduct a session on gender-based violence in Gujarati, and this is the way bureaucracy.
And honestly speaking, that gentleman, my boss, who said Purnima's agenda when I was introducing GRB and it was in the budget speech, and he even told the CM, Purnima's agenda, acha bolo, matlab, it is not his agenda. He was talking from a patriarchal mindset, but I know for sure that
they don't want to legitimize, no? That is
had I pointed it out to him, he would have corrected his language.
Correct.
He would have corrected, I know that. But, after all, he was my boss. And I said, what the hell? So long as it's getting done, let me get it done. That is more important than my ego hassle with his language.
And I think, data, even the small states like Kerala, they have trained Kutumbashri women to collect data. So along with the
yes.
routine work there, because they know the pulse of each and every village, no? And they are the ones who also provide data, and then it is taken to the
Why is
from
why is
tehsil to-
Kudumshri not simplified for adoption and replication in every state?
Correct. It's not cost. It is very cost effective also for the
Yeah.
state, and other states have more resources than Kerala in terms of.
In fact, I sent
LCD.
teams of my IAS and state services officers together
Yeah.
to Kerala for two reasons. One, they will make a partnership of officers, whether it's IAS or state service, forever, once they go together. The second was opening of their eyes, that this can happen on this very planet, in this very country, that women, as per their affordability, the money is collected. Today, those uneducated women can do audits, they can set up old age homes, they can even facilitate children's going abroad for studies. So that is the level of empowerment that Kudumshri has achieved, which is the biggest success.
Well, plus they are literate. They are all of them have a school education. They are fluent in Malayalam, both writing and reading, and even paperwork. They are very. That is so. I think that is also.
They have evolved.
Yeah.
They have evolved.
Yeah.
So an
Even in
enabling.
Rajasthan, now you see that the girls, all the elected representatives are 12th pass. No. Even the age cohort has changed. All of them are young women and very qualified women. Main thing is that they are facing such a aggressive patriarchy. That's it. But still, at a ground level, you see they are really fighting. No?
As women's empowerment increases, patriarchy will also increase.
Yeah, backlash will be.
Backlash will be there. So we have to be ready for those things. But I also feel that, climate change is a new concern. Aging population is a new concern. And data telling its own story is something we should plumb.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
And also the coping with the new technologies which are coming. No?
New technology and learning that. Ravideep had a question, I think.
Yeah.
She was on the screen sometime back.
Yeah. Ravideep Kaur. Yeah. Who else?
Ma'am, I'll just read out Ravideep Kaur's question. She had also typed it on the chat box.
Okay.
She says, how do media portrayals influence perceptions of gender roles in Indian society as we see these days? How
she's there. She's there.
Yeah, Ravideep.
Yeah, ma'am, my question related to a media, like we see how national media is raising the issues and they were not even talking. So what their participation in gender equality, they barely talked. Even they were not even raised the national issues, those are matters.
Media and TRPs.
Yeah. Media and influencer, and we see these days are very negative influencing things are going on ki hum ye hame to ghar pe rehna hai, and
but I would say that
is
yes,
wrong
Bilkis Bano issue was raised, but to what extent it needed to be raised, it was picked up from, media did help in that. Nirbhaya, of course, was a unique case. That was unique.
That was the 10 to 12 years ago. Right now, the situation was little bit different.
Yeah,
we barely see any debates.
But today, even 10, 12 years, social media was not as strong as it is today. So let's not bank on media alone.
Mainstream media is limited, but
mainstream
media is limited and captured.
It is captured by the media barons, globally.
Yeah, whether we like to admit it or not.
These media are in a ground level. Social media was in the maybe in a upper class or middle class.
No more.
Yes.
You can't say for our state.
Now social media is everywhere.
Everybody in the rural, even tribal girls, everybody is carrying this.
Your sabzi wala also.
Sabzi wala, everything.
But madam, matters na ki what they are watching.
Yeah. But
that's okay.
So we can also use that media, reach out. If we have a regional listing, then we can also reach out to them.
Ravideep, let's also recognize the intersectionalities of gender are so complex that different levels of society have often made me believe, am I upsetting
50% digital connectivity India has.
Yeah. Sometimes when I speak to a certain category of people, I have to completely change my discourse. Because I know that this will not make sense to them. So, and I've seen that even people women at the very, very, let's say, lower economic strata sometimes far more empowered.
In fact, they are far more empowered because they are not part of consumerist culture and atomized. They
Yeah,
are a group,
exactly.
So whenever I
Exactly.
go for any training in Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi, or this, I think I feel more because they have faith in each other. They stand by each other. Social capital is even more. They are not atomized and isolated. Middle class and upper class women are. In fact, the dowry murders are also increasing more among the highly qualified women, no, because they are so lonely, and all the oppressive people know that once you are isolated, you easy to kill you, no, easy to attack. That's very.
Society also different. And North societies are very different, and South societies are different.
No, but even in North society, if you go to the self-help groups and all, leave aside they are in whether above poverty line or below poverty line, the social capital they have, those 20 women sticking together, that does make difference. That does make difference. It's a life and death issue. So yeah, if you're sticking together with those 20 women, you at the time of crisis they are with you. So that is the difference. Now you see between the middle and upper class women who are in a competitive mercenary culture and the women in the lower economic strata, wherever they are organized, I'm saying. Either due to Panchayat, 50% reservation, or because of the microfinance one, whatever associations they have. Yeah.
Thank you.
One more question. There is a question, I think. Shweta Manik Shetty. Shweta, are you there? Yes.
Hi. So I'm just going to repeat basically what I've written. How can the architecture industry help break the gender thresholds that are seen in the built environment that we live, work, and rest in? And what kind of data should I, as an architect or an urban designer or a design strategist, look at to make cities not just gender inclusive, but also gender empowering? Yeah.
Ma'am, Purnima ma'am, I think has lost her connection. So if you'd like to take this question.
Yeah, I think one is that women's role in the decision making, because we have seen in the SRA, slum rehabilitation authorities in Mumbai, where they kept the meetings with women. Their perspective of housing was very different, because they did not want the row houses, because in row houses what you get to see is only kachra of the previous row.
Yeah.
What they wanted was a circular designing,
Mm.
and where you would have at the center, you would have a ground for the children,
Mm.
health clinic.
Yeah.
Then they said that because their houses were so small, they wanted a Sanja Chula, because some people from Punjab and all, they gave the idea that we all can, at least to make chapatis, we can go to that particular room. Plus the community hall, that was that was a demand where students, children can study, because their homes are so small and there are so many people, and TV is always on, so there could be one library.
I think it just.
These are the new things. Then even Latur, when the earthquake took place and they built the new houses, the way urban planners or the engineers had come up with the house, they did not consult women. And the funds were raised by BBC and Times of India. And the houses, first of all, the houses they were constructed, they did not keep into consideration the lived experiences of women, because they had poultry and they had cows and buffaloes and all that. So the shed for the animals was far away from home. And they had created the kind of urban houses that you have, gated community like that. That doesn't work, no, because that should have thought of a compound, because space was not so much of a problem in that interior place. Other thing was that houses were given in the name of men, and all these men, they had ownership of house. They told women-headed households and women and girls who lost their male members, husband or father, they were asked to be their co-wives. So that if to your housing, because you are homeless, you are in a refugee camp, if you want to have a shelter, then in Marathi they call it Thevleli Baiko. Thevleli Baiko is a keep.
Yeah.
So the study which was done by qualitative study done by TISS, which realized that even in disaster you have to be very this. So they had to sit with the engineers and they had to sit with the architect that what kind of designing of the house should be there, and whatever in every area situation is different. Women from Himachal would have a different kind of needs for the housing and all. So taking women's collective wisdom into consideration is very important for any architect. And that should be institutionalized, no? That when you make the housing committee or management committee, if we make a rule that 30% of all the 1/3 of all management committee members should be there, should be in every housing project should be women. You may say that, okay, they will be puppet in the hand, or man will take decision. They will, in the process, first time it would be like that. But when the capacity building takes place, training programs are organized, these women will also start asking, no? So the process has to start. You have never given them. There's one thing, even the corporators will say, two things they never allow us. One is a finance, and other one is a vehicle, because vehicle is also controlled by men when it comes to elected representatives and all. Even in Gram Panchayat, like they would keep the keys, or men would keep the keys, and they would never allow these women to enter the Gram Panchayat. So that from that level, they had to fight, no? So after 30 years, things have changed, and latest UNDP report also shows that 56 out of all 1.8 million women elected representatives that we have, because now we have 20 states have 50% reservation. 46% are taking independent decision. 54% are Sarpanchpati or Pradhanpati or whatever. Sasurpati, Sasure. 56% are still Sasur is taking stand, or husband is taking stand. But 46% are independently taking stand, and they are backed by other women. So they work as a collective, and they are feeling protected, and they have created social capital legitimacy. Even like and in Maharashtra and Gujarat, we have a all women panchayat. So even on the open seat, villagers have given vote to these women, because they have prevented child trafficking, they have prevented child labor, they are not embezzling the panchayat fund for their personal gain. And 12 counts, and that UNDP report says that on 12 counts, women elected representatives have done marvelous job. Pakka road, whether Pakka road would be connected to the mall or to the hospital or to the school, so that the state transport bus can come and children can go to this thing. Second one is a reading room for the villager. Any villager can come and sit in that place. Converting garbage into a garden, no? This whole composting, rainwater harvesting, gobar gas plant, water, the way pipeline, the water distribution, for basic needs of the household, no? Not only water for industry or water for agriculture, but water for the domestic consumption. These are the major areas. And I have seen fights in the panchayat where man would say that we want their PWD should connect the road with the mall, shopping mall or a theater, cineplex. And women said nothing doing. We need connectivity with the hospital and education. No, even in areas where one MLA had used all his area development fund for constructing college and there were women, girls from nearly 40-50 villages. They could, it was anticipated that they wanted to be in the college because they were giving up studies. They were after 12th, and there was no connectivity. The villagers had approached the state government to give priority of connecting this college with the villages, which did not do. All of them boycotted election. 100% boycott from that particular pocket. And when the sophologists saw that why that nobody has voted, then the villagers, they said, we have been demanding this for past 5 years, you did not do that. And suddenly within 6 months, you saw all these roads were constructed and girls started going to the school. So we have seen that. So, yeah. Even in Punjab,
Gender priorities are so important.
Yeah. And when they are empowered, they do excellent job. In Punjab, when the moment elected representatives came to know of best quality of rice, best quality of wheat, being PDS wheat diverted for production of beer all of them were up in arms against the, they said, how dare you do PDS minister? They said, this is meant for people's food. How can you give it? And as it is, Punjab is saturated. Punjab is flooded with a variety of alcoholic beverages. And they also demanded that none of the state highways or national highways should have convert all these liquor shops into lassi shops. That also, I remember demanding that if this liquor is creating more road accidents and road rage. We don't want these fellows to go hungry. Let the shop be there, but it should be for lassi. And we saw a similar thing women in Somalia had done after, and even Rwanda, they had done that. First thing they attacked was that this kind of alcoholism is just bringing nothing but impoverishment, violence, and this thing, no? So bleak future for our children, and we don't want that.
Ma'am, there is also an observation. See, when urban designers or when designers plan something, even if we talk about a house, an architect would sit with the client and ask them what sort of a house do you want, what sort of a furniture would you like, how many people stay here, things like that. Now, in urban design, no, a lot of the times the quantitative data is perfect, but the qualitative data which can come from the citizens or the future citizens, that is missing. And the kind of participatory design approach that we talk about in design research is found missing when it comes to practice. So is there a way, or should I be working on a project that can find a way to bring participatory design approach as a policy, or like as a
policy in the whole safe city discourse, we need to bring that. And I think Women Architects Association, Neera Adarkar and others, they have the thing unitedly. If you strike, it is state governments are ready to listen. No, at a subnational level, it is easy to bring the changes. That is, and why only talk about housing? Even the public places, how many gardens are there where women can go? Now, at least in Bombay, we have one garden in a very area of Muslim area where there is a tremendous segregation. There is a garden only for women, so that women can go with the children. Otherwise, all public places are dominated by men, and that's why what they have written Why Loiter book, no? By so that also says that none of the public spaces. Bombay has 2,300 toilets for men, public toilet blocks for men. We hardly have 112, and they are also not clean. Doors are broken. You can never use public facilities. Women collectors, women in professional life, all of them are complaining. They also don't get it. So I think there the architects can be very good in the town planning. What are the things which are missing, which we are missing, and what are the things which are only privileging? That is.
Incidentally, ma'am, I am involved in the value addition that is happening for the new city that is coming next to the new Navi Mumbai airport. And that's why we are trying to bring in all these strategies which are gender inclusive and so on.
That's very important. So even public parks you have thought of? Public
parks, lanes, how can walking be more safer for...
Because there are virtually no footpaths now. Every whole of Bombay is dug up. And people, even two-wheelers are also running on footpath. So people, elderly and disabled and children, women, all of them suffer. No? So. And also the activities on the road, because that is very important even for your town planning. If there's nothing is happening on the road, then there is insecurity for all those who are vulnerable.
In Malmo, when they planned the town, they were also taking into account that they should minimize the use of transport because of fossil fuels.
Correct.
So when I mentioned that the lady will deposit, garbage, dalenge, go to grocery shop, drop the child, how many steps she'll have to walk? So it's not too much. The city was being designed with that in mind. Housing colonies were being designed. Commercial areas, spatial planning was being done like that. So spatial planning, there is UDPFI guideline, which is of course modified now. You could look at that. And I'm sure you're looking at that in any case, the UDPFI. So how is it gendered or not? Is it gendered or not is an important consideration. And keeping into account the need for minimizing vehicular transport.
Yes. We have tried to
Climate resilient,
highlight that.
as they call it.
Huh? Sorry, ma'am.
Climate resilient.
Yes.
Yeah.
Climate resilient city planning or
Yeah. Yes, we are looking at that. Thank you so much.
You saw the latest publication on Safe City by ORF?
Yes, ma'am.
Acha, acha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there were many women architects also and engineers who were in that.
Yes.
Round
Thank you so
tables.
much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Purnima Chauhan ji and Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, for taking out the time to answer all the questions in so much detail and with so much patience. And especially thank you so much for shedding light on such an important issue and for inspiring us to advocate for a positive change. Now, I would like to call upon Professor Vibhuti Patel ji if you have any closing remarks for today's session.
The only thing, only one sentence, that it was an excellent presentation with so many practical tips and so many learnings that we have at a ground level, and how public policy, laws, people's participation, and the reflexivity that we have, like seeing the things not in terms of black and white, but going into the nuances and bringing out what is invisible, visibilizing that, and most important thing, the database, like a very, very accurate database. Otherwise, we are shooting in the dark. So I think these are the major learnings of today's lecture, and we have benefited a lot. Dr. Purnima Chauhan, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Patel. It's always so rewarding to talk to you.
Yeah, to you also. We learn so much. Yeah. Good.
Thank you, ma'am. So as we come to an end of day 4 of Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, an online...
Sorry, I would like to thank...
Yes, ma'am.
The questions are very interesting as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Questions also, all of them, because they are themselves also in the field, no? So that makes a lot of difference. Correct.
Yeah.
So as we come to an end of day 4 of Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, an online national winter school program, a 2-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship, I, Reet Lath, researcher, IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. We are grateful to our experts for day 4, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, and Dr. Purnima Chauhan ji, for taking out their valuable time and giving us an opportunity to learn from this online certificate program. We thank you, and we thank all our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. Readings for the session have been shared in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared for your learning. We look forward to welcoming you for our 5th day of the certificate course on 3rd February 2024 at 3 p.m. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in to our future IMPRI web policy talk and web policy learning. Wishing you a very good evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.